It's now time for The Sit Down with Don Tony.
The Sit Down, where Don Tony talks one-on-one with his followers.
What are you looking at?
About the world of pro wrestling, pop culture, and so much more.
The Sit Down with Don Tony.
And now, your host, Don Tony.
Hey, what are you looking at? I just had a big plate of pasta. Relaxing here. About to pop a little black Sambuca, get the show started. How's everybody doing? It is Sunday night, August 16, 2026. Welcome to the Sit Down. Hope everyone has had a good weekend. We're about to start the new week. And a lot of interesting stuff has happened in the world of pro wrestling over the last 7 days. For everybody who is live, you guys obviously get to dictate most of what we discuss over the next 90 minutes or 2 hours or so. But, let's get right into it. Let's pour this all the way up. Someone actually said to me I should do something like where, well, that's a lot. If I, once I finish drinking this, the show's over. Or if people send contributions later, I should just fill it up. It's only this much left. I got to get a new bottle. But, I do want to tell everybody something. You're going to get a kick out of this, especially for 2026, because a lot of you are going to be like, DT, what the hell did it take you so long? I actually bought something over the weekend, and no, it wasn't a blow-up doll. I actually bought something at the advice of someone that might help me sleep a little bit at night. And the funny thing is, a lot of you know that I do Google, I do a little research, I go on Reddit, I go on science pages, but I also check a little AI just to see scientifically some facts without having opinions thrown in with it. And when I was looking into the possibility of a combination I wanted to do to help me sleep, fucking AI was telling me, oh, that's dangerous, that's this, it's that, you could sleep drive and sleep walk and sleep eat. I'm like, if I could sleep eat, I don't care, big deal. But I was like, it kind of scares you not to do things instead of just giving you facts. So I went ahead and did it. And someone told me to buy edibles, that if I take an edible 3 hours before I go to sleep, that I'll sleep like a baby. I fucking slept 7.5 hours last night. I took my normal Ambien 3 hours before. I took a fucking half an edible. You literally, you just pop this open, and see, I still got a half over here. So tonight, right after I do the show, I take half an edible, wait about 3 hours, pop a Ambien. I slept like a fucking baby. Now, that's not medical advice. But for anybody out there that already has edibles, it's the wild, I don't know, something berries or whatever. But I want to go back to AI tonight and honestly type, fuck you, I slept like a baby. I want to see what it says back to me. So I know you're probably going to say drinking all of this and having an edible is probably not a good idea. Trust me, I don't do it to be cool. I don't do it to show off or try to be tough. I do it because I want a little relaxing drink when we talk a little bit about wrestling, because quite often we complain a lot about wrestling, and it's not nice to have a clear, head, and every week there's bitching and complaining about wrestling. Sure, there's always going to be shit to complain about. Sometimes we could praise things. Sometimes we could share a couple of things that a lot of other people out there would rather keep vague, because it keeps the conversation going. It keeps the vagueness going. If someone puts something out there that's unclear and they keep putting it out there that's unclear, then they have a story that they can keep posting over and over and over again. But the minute you actually post the actual answer to something, the conversation's done. Well, why is Netflix censoring this? Well, here's the answer. Oh, shit. Okay. That's it. Story's done. But you see all the people out there that won't talk about it. And the theme, obviously, for this episode is the 5 SmackDown segments that were quote-unquote cut from SmackDown. Shinsuke Nakamura teasing Takahashi. And if any of you out there want my thoughts on that, I'll share with you in a moment. You had The Miz and Kit Wilson. You had Fraxium and Ricky Saints. You had Paige cutting a promo. You had Nick Aldis and Blake Monroe. And we were right last week. Remember, somebody super shouted me last week and said, when do I think Blake Monroe's going to wrestle? I said, in a week or two. And that's exactly what's going to happen. 5 segments cut. Seem a little strange to you? Do you think they were actually cut? I actually got a little bit of an answer for you. And I actually like the answer that I received. So, you know what? And yes, we're going to talk about Chelsea Green. We're going to have a talk about Chelsea Green because Chelsea Green followed the path of some individuals we've talked about in the past when it comes with promos. And the minute I bring it up, a lot of you are going to remember what we talked about in the past and why Chelsea Green's promo hit so well. I mean, she nailed it. I mean, breaking through the WWE ceiling, I wouldn't say that, but it's very close. She definitely is going to take this to the next level. And I saw somebody super shouted a Chelsea Green question a few moments ago. I will answer that. But before we get into all of your questions, and I promise you we're going to start very early today. Tomorrow we have the Don Tony Show right after Raw. We'll do a little quick recap of Raw. We'll get into news and a few other things. So tonight I want it to be mostly your questions. Interesting comments sent to me about Eddie Kingston's return. Somebody wants me to talk about that, remind me. And, we'll talk about Chelsea Green and this topic right here. So for all of you out there, you see Paige's tweet complaining about the segment being cut? Okay. Here's what I got today, all right, because I found it strange that WWE would be this sloppy and cut 5 segments. Now, remember, and here's something that you guys should think about that no one in the news and the podcast world has brought up yet, as far as I could see, and I've seen a lot of comments already. The international fans that don't get commercial breaks as of yet, those segments would have been the perfect spot for them to see it. Now, listen, SmackDown, where it's available outside the United States, obviously it's a little bit different than here in the United States. You get USA Network, and that's fine. But I'm talking about overseas, in some countries where you don't get commercials. Why weren't those segments aired? Think about that for a minute. Now, if anybody's going to say to me, well, DT, maybe they didn't air during SmackDown because they planned on airing it during SmackDown and they just ran out of time. That excuse would make sense if all 5 segments were taking place at 9:59 p.m. Eastern. All right. If you were going to sprinkle them throughout the show, why didn't they air during international commercial breaks? Something for you to think about, right? Well, I actually reached out to someone, and a lot of you know, over the years, we've been friendly with some people that work, and a lot of times very low positions in WWE, assistant, cameraman, production assistant, this and that. I mean, you've seen them in the past pop up from going back as far as the 1, 2, 3 Flash chats that we used to do. I reached out to somebody today and I said, what's the deal with these segments being cut? And cut by design. Okay. Did anybody notice where these segments ended up after SmackDown? My friends, someone who's live right now in the chat, just post in the chat, where did all 5 of these segments appear immediately after SmackDown? Does anybody know that answer? I know someone will definitely answer it correctly. Eddie says X. That's not a bad answer. That's actually not necessarily the area. Death is the one that got it. Death Gears. YouTube. WWE put it on YouTube before they put it anywhere else. Okay? Even before their own website. Now, don't you find that a little interesting? Especially when you factor in ad revenue to this? What WWE is now testing, and it's testing, all right? You don't need, listen, I'm not throwing any disrespect on any of the wrestling journalists out there that work very hard and give you usually legit news. And we shout them out. We credit them as much as, we can. Sometimes we don't, because we just don't know where our origination of a story is, because so many different people write shit and variations of it. But you don't need to wait for a Q&A in a conversation with somewhere else that somehow becomes news because they're answering a question. The most funniest thing last week we talked about on Wednesday was Dave Meltzer going viral for the Bayley update. And I literally read news sites that said that Dave Meltzer confirmed there's no update. How the fuck is that news? Breaking news, I'm still alive. Now if I was on my deathbed, it's oh, by the way, prayers go out to Slick. Remember Slick from the WWF days? Jive Soul Bro, he is in the hospital. Was rushed to the hospital. They're saying that he had a heart attack and he needed to go undergo emergency heart surgery. Now, dealing with family members who have had some very serious heart surgery, my mom, a couple of valve surgeries, and my father almost had the Widowmaker. What probably happened with Slick is that he probably had a blockage and had a heart attack as a result, raced him to the hospital, and he probably had to undergo open heart surgery. It's just, I hope they didn't have to freaking do this, because they did that to my mom. They did that to my dad. And, now they're starting with new technology that they go in through the groin. So I don't know if this is something they had to cut, because that's just awful. I've seen people outside of my family who show that scar, and that's just awful, but it saved your life. So as far as I know, he is resting comfortably in a hospital and had to undergo emergency heart surgery. So honestly, prayers go out to Slick, man. Definitely prayers go out to Slick. So, all right, getting back to this. Couple of things I want to point out. All right. Now, I already pointed out that these didn't air in the international markets. You notice something else about these segments? Not one segment involves a main eventer. Not one segment involves like a very must-see TV spot as far as WWE television goes. You might be very interested in seeing Nakamura maybe bring in Takahashi. You might be entertained by The Miz and Kit Wilson. You might find Fraxium and Ricky Saints, a little lighthearted fun. You might want to see Paige beat the fuck out of Nikki Bella or vice versa. And you might think that Blake Monroe versus Julia, my condolences for Julia next week, and I think you'll know why when we watch SmackDown. You take notice how none of these segments are like very, very high on the food chain. WWE is doing, and this is what I was told is testing, is recording bonus content and throwing it up on YouTube so fans feel like they're getting more. All right, they're actually doing additional segments. And sure, not everything is going to be omitted and put on YouTube instead. I mean, certain segments you are going to put on SmackDown. If Nakamura debuts Takahashi, it will happen on SmackDown. It won't be a bonus clip afterwards. When Julia faces Blake Monroe, that is not going to be, a bonus segment on YouTube after SmackDown goes off the air. What they're doing is segments that are important for storyline, but maybe not must-see, cut down CM Punk and Kevin Owens' promo a little bit to give them a little airtime. This is where it goes. Bonus footage. That's what this is. This is a test by WWE to give more, because think about it. And we've talked about this for fucking 15 years. What did I used to say? Some wrestling promotions should live on YouTube because it costs nothing. You put your content on YouTube. You don't pay for the storage to be served there. Yeah, you have ad revenue you have to split, and your SuperChats you got to give a little cut too. But companies, shows should live on YouTube. You see a lot of podcasters. They don't have websites. They don't have storage areas. How many of them originate on Blog Talk Radio or some other bullshit place? They don't have like a database or an archive where you could ingest all this stuff. A lot of it is just on YouTube, and that is smart because it doesn't cost anything. Yes, you have to have your own equipment and this and that, but the thing is, by WWE putting this shit on YouTube, just like they did with AAA, just like they did with some other NXT stuff before the deal got finalized that we talked about very recently, you throw it on YouTube. You get a bunch of ad revenue. You get a little bonus. And some of the wrestlers who were not important enough, I hate to use that term, but some of the wrestlers who were not important enough to make the main show, yeah, they're going to play it off in social media that they were disrespected. Paige goes on social media and complains about it. Do you think Paige in the wildest dreams is going to criticize TKO and WWE production any way, shape, or form right now? Absolutely not. So this is a test by WWE to give us some additional content, additional footage, and then sharing it afterwards, especially when you have a shitload of storylines going on. This might save a few people a job for a little while, because if you could get some extra content, extra bonus stuff on YouTube, 2, 3, 4, 5 segments, 1 segment, maybe even a match once in a while, you know, that might actually save some people from being cut from the show entirely. So this is a little bit of a test right now. WWE's not that sloppy and record that much content thinking, we have 4 on TV. We're going to have 9. Oh, we're going to have 9 segments during SmackDown. You know, like, who really thinks that? Last week, how many did we have? And it seemed excessive. Now you add 5 more? Doesn't that seem a little strange to you? Why would you have these segments just to cut it? Right? So it makes sense to me. And I like it. I like it. Because you get a little bonus stuff afterwards. I don't care. I got to go on YouTube to watch it. Ultimately, it shows up on X. Ultimately, it's on their website. Just like Peacock. Ultimately, SmackDown is on Peacock. We were talking about it today on a history show. A lot of people don't realize as far as SmackDown's library and Peacock right now, even though, you know, SmackDown's USA Network. You know, so this is all done for, yeah, is it WWE being a little greedy? Sure. Hey, Paige, record a 2-minute segment. We're going to throw it on YouTube. We're not going to put it on SmackDown. We're going to throw it on YouTube. You can play off however you want and everything, but, you know, how much does that cost? How much did that cost to record 2 minutes with Paige? How much does that cost for Nick Aldis, Blake Monroe, and Julia to be in a backstage segment? Hey, guys, we want you to record a segment and hype up your match for next week. All right, just 2-3 minutes, whatever it is, and you throw the shit on YouTube. That's all it is. That's all that is. So, as far as Nakamura bringing in Takahashi, guy is a phenomenal wrestler. I still think about the match he had not too long ago against Kyle Fletcher. Guy could work. We've seen him in AEW make some spots because of the New Japan stuff. I'm going to say something that will anger a lot of people. I do not say it to ruffle feathers. I do not say it to piss people off. I don't say it to get any news items. If that was the case, we would have taken fucking that dickhead that went after AJ Styles' son. We would have made that segment a separate clip online. You know, having him play the role of Psycho Stu, and you know what we talked about last week. You know, not a very fun segment to talk about, but I'll say this. It reminds me of a little bit of the Motor City Machine Guns. I truthfully believe the WWE Universe is not going to care all that much about Takahashi. All right? You might get Wade Barrett to really get passionate about it, or someone else, Corey Graves, or whoever it is. I'm just using anybody. That's Takahashi. Like, the casual WWE Universe fan is not going to care. You will get the very, very passionate, vocal people on social media that will comment about it. You will get a boatload of media to comment about it. You'll get podcasters who comment about it. But as far as the everyday fan goes, the man, as far as I know, does not speak English. Okay? Him reuniting with Nakamura as a tag team in the WWE, I like it. Until I remember the WWE tag team division. Just think of what's been going on with Raw. think of what's going on with SmackDown. No disrespect to Damian Priest, no disrespect to R-Truth, the Viking Raiders, Humberto Carrillo, whoever the fuck you want to say that's been in a tag title match in the last couple of months. Tag team division sucks. So what are we possibly going to get out of this? I mean, are we going to get some type of match that's designed for the marks? I truthfully believe this is going to follow the path of, not necessarily the Motor City Machine Guns, because they did come into a nice pop. But if you remember when we covered it that night, I said, you give it a couple of weeks. They're middle-aged. They're in their 40s. They're not like, they don't stand out in the crowd. All right. They're not the most charismatic on the mic. I think a lot of kids would be like, oh, listen to the music. Like, there was nothing about it because so many people wrestle good. So many people wrestle good. This week is the anniversary of Drew McIntyre talking about how 85% of the WWE roster shouldn't even be there because they can't work all that good and they don't look larger than life or they don't have a unique aspect about themselves. That's why, like I said Matt Cardona is going to be dead in the water. I don't care if he's married to Chelsea Green. I don't care if he's on life support. I don't care if he's a Make-A-Wish survivor. I don't care if he fucking is blackmailing people in WWE. Fact of the matter is, you take away woo-woo-woo. Like, you think the casual wrestling fan that tunes in every week cares that he's serious now? You think they care about Big Bill? I had a vendetta for 10 years. People are like, what the fuck are you talking about? You cleaned up your act, you're sober, you got married, you had an AEW job, made a lot of money. The fuck, like, really, who's that? My point is, there'll be some people that'll go for it. Make no mistake about it. There will be fans that will pop nicely for Takahashi. At the end of the day, it's not something for the WWE Universe, the masses. Guy's not going to cut a promo. He's not going to do stupid comedic stuff. He's not going to have any, interaction or catchphrases with the WWE Universe. They're going to see another guy that can actually work, and it's going to be smothered by other people who can work. You'll have, without a doubt, a great match with Fraxium versus Nakamura and Takahashi. You'll see other people. And then it's like, now what? I'd be shocked to shit if that guy lasts a year. That's just my honest opinion. I personally think he is better for a different company. I don't even know if NXT would be the right place for him. I think he would be a hell of a lot better if he had a regular stint in AEW or worked TNA, MLW, Indies. Not everybody who's a great talented Japanese wrestler should be a home, I shouldn't say homeboy, but a mainstream, wrestler that works predominantly in the United States. We've seen this story and this movie too many times in the past. WWE Creative isn't the greatest about, putting over international talent, let alone somebody that don't speak English. And Nakamura don't speak English. And I know what somebody's going to say right now, well, Nakamura didn't speak English, look how over he got. Yeah, look how long he's been there. Takahashi doesn't, I like it. It would be a great addition. I think it would put some really good quality matches, but I think for the casual wrestling fan, if there's no connection with the personality of Takahashi, after a while, it's going to be like that other Japanese guy that's in NXT right now. I can't remember his name, but you know who I'm talking about. They brought him in. I'm not talking about Io Sky's husband. I'm not talking about Naraku. I'm talking about the other guy that came in like a year and a half ago, and they gave him like a main event match. I think he even faced Obafemi for the championship once. Someone will remember his name and put it in the chat. They made a big deal for 2-3 weeks, and that was it. It's done. Guy's not going to the main roster. If he goes to the main roster for WWE, it's going to be a trainer. It's going to be a trainer. It's not going to be for a talent. That's just my honest feeling about Takahashi. Is the guy a great fucking worker? Absolutely. Is he great with certain people? Absolutely. But he is not one that I think will connect to the mainstream WWE universe. Yoshiki Inamura. Thank you very much to everybody in the chat. Yoshiki Inamura. You guys remember the big fuss around Inamura when he first came in? Look at it now. You could see that a mile away. Look at recently what they've done to Julia. I mean, sure, she's repairable. The woman is awesome. You know, you give the right platform, the right amount of time, and the right opportunity, Julia could turn it around. Snap of her finger. You know, it ain't her fault. Look what WWE's done with her for the last year. It's ridiculous. So suddenly you're going to put this guy in there and suddenly he's going to get himself. I don't see it. I don't see it. Some people will pop, but I don't think it'll be a mainstream. So, all right. Just one last thing before we get into more of your questions. I definitely would talk about Chelsea Green too. Yeah, we could take this off the screen. We could take this off the screen. That is a little photo synopsis of this week's history show. A lot of very, very cool moments went down this week in wrestling history. And that was a fun episode to put together, so I definitely recommend it. I will say this. A lot of you have been asking me all week my thoughts on Eddie Kingston's return to AEW and how out of shape he looks. You know, it was sad. I've been a fan of Eddie Kingston's for over a decade and a half. He comes from my neck of the woods. A lot of the people that he came up with, I actually worked with also in different ways. Man is awesome. What you see is what you get. And this will segue to Chelsea Green's promo, because some of what I'm about to say about Eddie Kingston does bleed into Chelsea Green. I know the guy goes through a lot of mental health. A lot of battles of mental health. No question about it. And listen, you guys have seen pictures of me when I was 360 pounds. Food was my comfort. Food was my vice. All right. The thing is that after some health scares and kind of like getting involved with an attractive woman, you know, and other things, your health, your family, you know, relationship, you kind of say to yourself, you know, I don't want to look like that no more. And you know, I'm doing what I can to try to get better. So last year when Drew McIntyre said what he said and talked about how, you know, some people are just completely out of shape, like there's no excuse. You get paid that kind of money. You know, you go to the gym. You're like, why do you look the way you look? And obviously he wasn't directing it to any one person, but people decided to fill in the blanks themselves. And the person that kept being brought up last year was Eddie Kingston. And, you know, you feel bad because, you know, the person's already dealing with mental health issues. But when you see what you see in the ring and what we saw this weekend, last weekend, you know, with his weight, if we're being honest, he doesn't look healthy. He might be happy. And trust me, when I was 360 pounds in the privacy of my own home with a whole bunch of food, by myself alone in my house, I was happy as pig and shit also. But the thing is, he is so beloved by fans because it feels real. Like what you see is what you get. What you hear is what is true. And that's why people fell in love with him. You guys may remember before he ever signed with AEW, he was doing NWA, and you guys will remember this. And this is going to segue to Chelsea Green. Eddie Kingston used to kill it with his promos in NWA. Homicide in NWA killed it with his promos. I watched those guys on the indies kill it with their promos from where they came from. Mike Santana, very recently, before he became TNA World Champion, talked about where he came from and everything. You see things brought in with family. I brought up in the past when Heath Slater cut that promo right after Drew McIntyre. Was it Drew McIntyre that became the COVID champion? Anybody remember that COVID promo that Heath Slater cut? He wasn't even on the roster. And some people said that was the greatest promo in his career. You look at certain people, like I mentioned, Homicide, Eddie Kingston, Heath Slater, and others. Whenever it's real and you get to base it on reality, that's where some of the greatest promos ever happened. And that's what happened with Chelsea Green on Friday SmackDown. That's what happened with Chelsea Green on Friday SmackDown. Basically, what they told her was, you know, you've gotten to this point. You're now the interim champion. You've been injured. Now sell it why you should not surrender this title, or, you know, you've worked too hard to get to this point, and it's all based on reality. Back in the day, and I see this more and more in 2026, and I think a lot of you will agree. Back in the day, CM Punk would cut these spectacular promos. His family growing up, living straight edge and a bunch of other stuff, not getting opportunities. He was the voice of the voiceless. CM Punk spoke. Shitload of people listened. Now a lot of people believe that CM Punk has refound his love for professional wrestling. I'll make that clear. CM Punk has refound his love for professional wrestling. But a lot of people also believe CM Punk is no longer the voice of the voiceless. CM Punk is now corporate. CM Punk is now, you know, a TKO employee. CM Punk is giving back, no question. I saw the NXT stuff he did on Friday, Saturday, which was great. All right. I'm not saying he isn't, but a lot of people, when CM Punk cuts a promo now these days, a lot of people don't feel it. Even Jey Uso. There's only so many years you could hear the same thing over and over again. We played that promo from 2020 and then played 2025 last year. And the Jey Uso promo side by side was almost the exact same thing. He doubted me. You doubted me. Everybody doubted me. I'm not supposed to be here. Nobody believed in me. Like, you've been doing that for 6 fucking years in different ways, obviously. So when you first do it, people buy into it. When you get Jacob Fatu, see right now, Jacob Fatu, the reason why he's so over in half the shit he says, because people believe it. They know Jacob Fatu struggled. He did come from the streets. That guy had a shitload of roadblocks, self-induced, no question. But when you get the opportunity to base a promo on reality, you almost can't screw it up. You almost can't screw it up, because when it comes from here, and not just from here, you can't beat that. And if Chelsea Green has an inspirational story and people have truly seen her struggle to get where she is now, if you really take a step back, it's literally the female Matt Cardona. If you think about it, Matt Cardona left WWE, recreated himself, worked hard, did this, did that, and he finally got back home. Problem is, you know, there's no gimmick attached to that. Chelsea Green has a shitload of gimmick attached to her. You know, she's had different ones over the years, but Chelsea Green is a character. She the way she dresses, the way she presents herself, a lot of comedy, no question about it. When she first came into WWE, let's be honest, guys, the fucking Halloween stuff when they put the fucking pumpkin over her head and she's literally like this, and it looked like a bad scene from The Naked Gun, and everybody's like, pull it off your head, nitwit. You know, but obviously you don't pull it off your head, because that's what makes the whole segment comedy. She was a lot of goofy comedy, without question. But she's worked extremely hard. She was given chicken shit and always tried to turn it into chicken salad. And that's why she got over it. So when she cut what she cut on Friday, it felt real from here, because it was. And not many people are able to get that opportunity. You know, you'll get Kevin Owens that'll cut a promo because of where he was with his injury and coming back, and others. When people could base reality in a promo and your story is interesting enough, people will just jump all over it. Mickie James saying this weekend that Chelsea Green cut the greatest promo in her career. I agree with her, but I also disagree with her, because I wouldn't necessarily call that a promo. That was, you know, a lot of reality. I mean, that was a shitload of reality mixed in with it, but she killed it. She killed it. And let me tell you something, WWE's going to have an interesting decision to make going forward, because other people tried to break through the glass ceiling. You know, we remember Cross and some others, and they got themselves over, and they didn't do a damn thing because WWE had an agenda. I truthfully believe WWE always had an agenda with Chelsea Green. I've always believed that. Chelsea Green is too good, too talented, and too little of baggage. And that's a compliment that you don't waste that. You don't waste that. She's got the charisma. She's got the connection with fans. She knows how to get under people's skin or now get you behind her. So, I love what they did on Friday, but now the test is, now you got to back the shit up. Now you got to back the shit up. Talking about your frustration is wonderful. It was passionate. People felt it. People want to see her go further. If anything, from Friday, it probably hurt Rhea Ripley a little bit. Because a lot of people said this. In storyline, of course, a Nick Aldis. How come Chelsea Green has to be ready in 30 days, but Rhea Ripley could be out for fucking 30 weeks and she don't get stripped of the belt? That's one of, obviously, the casualties from doing what they did on Friday, but most people are like, whatever. You know what I mean? Whatever. But the good thing out of all of this is that Chelsea Green's broken orbital bone is not extremely serious. Because you remember, we talked about injuries in the past, from Bryan Danielson to Rhea Ripley to The Undertaker and some others. JC Jane. Some others have broken their orbital bone and were able to return rather quickly under safe precautions. So Chelsea Green, I think, will be fine. I think she'll be fine. But I enjoyed the segment very much, and it was based on a shitload of reality. So now this came in earlier, and I definitely want to answer it because it is an interesting question, and people keep bringing it up on occasion, so I have to answer it. All right, who's this from? Okay, where art thou? There you are. There you are, Ronnie. What's up, Ronnie? Ronnie says, what's up, fam? DTF, the Chelsea's promo on SmackDown. Do I still believe Michael Hayes' unreal comments about her were scripted? Yeah, I do. I believe Chelsea Green's comments by Michael Hayes on Unreal was 100% scripted. And the reason why I say that is, especially when you see the build-up for their seasons, you get into the emotions of the wrestlers, into the heart, into the mindset. You saw it. You kind of saw it again with Bruce Pritchard towards Obafemi and Trick Williams. Not as deep, but coming out of this recent season, Bruce Pritchard, he doesn't think that Obafemi and Trick Williams are ready. You got to remember, this was said a shitload earlier this year. Well, it might have even been the end of last year or the very beginning of 2026. Yeah, I think that is an excellent point to take if I'm Bruce Pritchard. In the beginning of 2026 saying that, sure, you don't know. You don't know. I mean, Trick Williams had a cup of coffee and, the fans were over with his music and everything, but you also got to mesh well. Now, I've said countless times, Trick Williams is going to be the face of this company. Obafemi will be one of the faces of this company. But the thing is, why would you throw Chelsea Green under the bus? Why? If WWE Unreal is to get behind your employees, get into a little bit more of what makes them tick, what they're all about, especially where you're a family and you're all working together, why would Michael Hayes say that shit about Chelsea Green and then producers of WWE Unreal say, yeah, this is good shit, man. Leave that shit in there. Leave that shit in. And just imagine if you're Chelsea Green. Let's pretend that this is real for a minute. Just imagine you're Chelsea Green and you find out that one of the lead writers and the producers for a fucking reality show all decide they're going to throw you under the bus because it's good TV. You think Triple H would allow that? You think the WWE hierarchy would be into that? Where is the support for her? Why would you do that? Why would you play such an evil prick and say something as stupid like that? And I am convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that Michael Hayes, I'm sure, really felt that way about Chelsea Green. But I think the idea was put it out there because the fans will be so much in an uproar with Michael P.S. Hayes, they'll get behind Chelsea Green that much more. I truthfully believe that. Because why would WWE purposely, for our entertainment purposes, throw her that fucking hard under the bus? You threw that woman under the bus big fucking time. You don't think that was strategic? This way, when she does get that moment and get over, everybody's like, yeah, fuck you, Michael P.S. Hayes. Doesn't it feel much better thinking that we could say, fuck you, Michael Hayes, than that never happening at all? I truthfully believe that was by design. It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Throw somebody else under the bus. Let's see who else you throw under the bus. And Obafemi and Trick Williams are not thrown under the bus. So why would you just do that? Why would Michael Hayes just do that? And again, why would you leave it? Why would you leave it? It makes zero sense. And since Chelsea Green is a consummate professional and she's been in this business far too long, she knows, wink, wink, go with it. I don't believe for 1 second. I do believe Michael Hayes felt that way, but I think light bulb went off in somebody's head and say, wait a minute. Kind of doing it a little bit with Sami Zayn now. If you really think about it. Don't you remember the bullshit wrestling websites a couple of weeks ago, led by Meltzer, that the reason why Sami Zayn was not kept as champion because he can't sell merch? He's not like a big merch guy. I fucking still got my fucking Sammy Uso merch. What do you, like, after all these years, you think now the reason why WWE didn't keep him as champion is because he's not marketable. What the fuck? Like, really? And it almost feels like, especially when you got busted open now, in the back pocket, they've been doing this for years. Just a lot of people refuse to believe it. They would take storylines and treat it as real news. And people start believing in that stuff. You look at the We Want Cody Man, you look at everything else. This was manufactured by WWE, enhanced by media. So to me, what they did with Chelsea Green is what they did with Sami Zayn, is what they did early in the year with Obafemi and Trick Williams. It's done by design to give you a reason to dislike. And just always think about this too. Think about the people who say the comment that piss you off. It's always somebody in the writing team you don't like. It's always somebody in the writing team you don't like. Bruce Pritchard, I'll take the heat for it. Yeah, no problem. Michael H., I'll take the heat for it. Like, yeah, it's always the people that notoriously WWE knows that the casual wrestling fan don't like. So we'll make them the evil bad guy. And then the funny thing about it is you throw that on Unreal, you throw it in mainstream storylines, WWE not treating Sami Zayn well, WWE throwing Chelsea Green under the bus. And then you get this storyline deep, and then what does Triple H say afterwards? I wish fans would stop thinking of creative and stop focusing on the wrestler. You motherfucker threw it on Unreal. You made us focus on the creative with the Obafemi and Trick Williams and the Chelsea Green comments. This is all done by design. This is an entertainment company that eats, sleeps, shits entertainment. And anytime there's a camera running, remember when TKO bought the company? Remember the meeting they had with WWE staff? 2 wrestlers that were in that meeting told Kevin and I directly, whenever there's somebody around, you always act like somebody's recording. I don't care if it's 2 people or 200 people. If you see someone around, you present yourself or you carry on as if the cameras are rolling. That's why Drew McIntyre storms off and walks off into his car. Drew McIntyre storms off busted open after telling everybody to go fuck themselves. This person this person did that. And it's all done by design. These people are very, very good at what they do. There's a reason why they're a multi-billion-dollar company. It's not because they aren't dumb at what they do. So, all right. I just wanted to get that out there. Jim Khan says, before Brawlout, AEW felt like a religious experience. Today, it feels like a harmless 2 hours of TV. I think the problem with AEW right now is all destination is to All In. And they don't have to, I think a lot of people agree with me on this. AEW does not have to convince their audience to order All In. You got top matches being advertised. You have debuts expected for some. They don't need to sell it for the loyal AEW fan. They're not going out of their way to sell it to casual fans. Their way of doing it is by giving us what they believe are strong matches on Dynamite. Tournament this, cup this, and a lot of it is centered around that. They're just trying to eat weeks till they get to All In. And what they're doing is they already got their core buying All In. So what they're doing now is they're trying to fill, the rest of the content with good quality stuff, but also giving people an opportunity that they're probably not going to have much of at All In. I mean, you look at a lot of these names being profiled. I mean, some of them obviously have big matches at All In, but a lot of them don't. So AEW is just going through the motions. Collision is a show with no identity. I mean, I remember when Rampage was around, and in the early days of Collision, it's going to be different roster. It's going to be different people on there. They're going to showcase more of the younger people. People that don't get an opportunity on Wednesday will get an opportunity on Friday and this and that. And that was fine and everything. But the problem is now Collision just feels like a bunch of matches thrown out there. It reminds me of Sunday Night Heat. Sunday Night Heat, we enjoyed it. But keep in mind, that was, almost 25 years ago? So at that time, it was great because you couldn't get enough of the Attitude Era and everything else. But the problem is, Sunday Night Heat, you had wrestlers that didn't get a lot of play on Monday Night Raw, but it just felt like matches put out there. It just a bunch of matches. And then if there was a pay-per-view later on, it would lead into a pay-per-view. But Sunday Night Heat didn't really have a lot of its own identity. It was just a lot of matches just being thrown out there. Collision has no identity. And Rampage is done with. They don't even do Battle of the Belts. So it just feels like, it's 2 hours of wrestling. But in defense of AEW, the religious experience, it's interesting because I remember my days of watching ECW. I'll always pay tribute. But for me, it was a ritual. Every week, set my alarm clock for 1:55 a.m. and fucking get up 2 o'clock in the morning, half dead, half asleep, just because I want to watch ECW live. I could set my VCR. Later on, other means, I don't know if I had TiVo. I had TiVo, I think, from 99 to 2001. But set your VCR 2 o'clock in the morning, get up Sunday and fucking watch it, or whatever it was on. And that wasn't good enough for me. I had to wake up at 1:55 in the morning, watch it live, and then go back to sleep. I always had to watch it live. And I was doing that for years, and it never got old for me. But keep in mind, you're talking about a 1 hour show. And keep in mind, that was the only show during the week. There was no Monday night ECW. There was no Thursday night, Wednesday night, Friday night. You had one episode and that was it. So here, they have to provide a certain amount of hours of wrestling every week, and they're trying to showcase everybody. I think the reason why so many people are happy working in AEW, even though when they really don't get much of a push. I mean, let's be honest. I was just talking to somebody the other day about the inspiration. If you start really thinking about some people in AEW, I'm not necessarily saying them, but we were talking about the inspiration. But, there's some people that you'll see them on TV, but it's like a whole bunch of nothing. But their job is filled enough that they don't have to, travel 8,000 miles, to have the same kind of work, or they get paid so well that they work half the time, get enough, get to have the matches that they want to do, not what a writer demands it to be done, and that's what we get. So to me, it's not a religious experience anymore. But I also think that should be a good thing because they set the bar so high early on. They set the bar so high. I mean, we remember when Goldberg fought Hogan on WCW Monday Nitro, and even decades later, people like, how could you give that away on free TV? That's a pay-per-view. I mean, you sold so many tickets for the Georgia Dome in such a short amount of time. You imagine that was a pay-per-view? Because Bischoff was more obsessed about popping a Nitro rating than anything else. Now, if he owned WCW and it was coming out of his own pocket, something tells me that match would have ended with a bullshit clusterfuck finish, and then they would have led to a pay-per-view of Goldberg versus Hogan. But when it's other people's money, you just do what you got to do. So, but, I just feel that AEW early on gave so many matches that were primed for pay-per-view on free TV. And it was about popping numbers, especially when they were going head-to-head with NXT. Even though people said it wasn't a war, yes, it was. It was. It was unfair to me, to the NXT wrestlers, because a lot of them was still very, very new and they had a difficult time having so much focus on them. So, I think AEW needed to pull back. So I'm glad it's not a religious experience anymore, because after a while it becomes numb. It becomes numb when everything feels over the top. After a while, it doesn't feel over the top anymore. I brought up the example, you watch horror movies. If you first saw a horror film when you were very, very young, you probably had nightmares. You watch a little bit more and then you're like, oh, this is goofy, this is stupid, this is this, that's fake and this and that. And then you watch it more and more and you could have the goriest of gory stuff and it doesn't faze you at all because you've become numb to it. It's like people who get addicted to porn. You go on a website, you see somebody topless, all right, it's nice and everything, and then you got to see something a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And then you get bored of that and a little bit more and you get bored of that. And now you got to start, like, it's just, you get used to it. It becomes boring. So, AEW had to pull back a little bit, but could they be handling All In better? Yes. Problem is they have so many people they want to showcase on TV that are not going to have big high profile spots at All In. This is why the build feels weak. You will get 8-man tags. You will get a 12-man tag, probably a dark match. You'll see a whole bunch of people thrown in one fucking match just to give them something. But you're using them on TV because you're trying to fill time. They're not doing enough to build, the people that really need it. This is my opinion. So, ECW on TNN, that was much later. When I say ECW, 2 a.m., Prime Network, I'm talking about 1995, 1996, 1997. I'm talking about the days of having to get up at fucking 2 o'clock in the morning if you wanted to watch ECW. Later on, they finally got the TV deal with TNN, and that was watered down. That was watered down. And I remember that clearly. The first match they ever had, the main event, was Rob Van Dam versus Jerry Lynn. And I think the ratings always averaged around like a 0.8 to a 1.1 rating. And, it was what it was. I thought it was a decent number, but I don't know. Paul Heyman, the story is that he promised TNN that he was going to have like 2-3 times the viewers of that. I don't know how that's possible when you think about the ratings that even WCW was doing. WCW was still around. And if you think of the methodology, the numbers that Paul Heyman supposedly was telling TNN, that rivals Nitro. That rivals Thunder. And no one in their right mind thought a pre-recorded ECW taking matches off of pay-per-views that's already happened, and maybe a vintage match once in a while was going to have the same numbers as the roster in WCW. No one ever thought that. So to me, I don't believe that story. And I don't think TNN would have believed that story either. And just because Paul Heyman says to somebody at TNN or Spike TV, whatever it was at the time, hey, we'll guarantee you 2.6 million viewers. I think they would have done a little homework and saw what WCW was doing and be like, nah, we're not buying that number. I don't buy it. So, all right. Yes, rest in peace, Rampage. Wasn't all that bad. Wasn't that bad of a show. I think they could have easily just had a different, time slot. I don't know. I mean, it's with the size of the roster. To me, Ring of Honor is Rampage. Like, I think in a perfect world, Tony Khan thinks one day Ring of Honor will have a TV deal. And he just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing it. But it's Ring of Honor only in name and obviously not. It's got an identity with some people, no question about it. But Ring of Honor, even back in the day when I was at odds with the original Ring of Honor because of some of the promotions we worked at the time, there was an aura about Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor felt like a really niche product. Very, very niche. GCW, to me, very fucking niche. Progress Wrestling, very niche. And that's not a bad thing. There are some promotions these days, House of Glory, very, very niche. Just got a style and identity about itself that feels a little different than others. Some people think that GCW is just a blatant ripoff of ECW. If that's how you feel, that's fine. But the point is, a lot of promotions today, they have their own unique identity or style about them that just feels different. And I think that's why, maybe it'll never get as big as, some of the other promotions that we talk about, but still have somewhat of some success behind it. So, I think MLW has a little bit of a different style. I think it's kind of like a little bit more of like a, I don't want to say like a shoot, so to speak, but a little bit more the Japanese style of wrestling. And I think it's just a little bit more of not just your quintessential, what you get. But they do have people inked to, unique contracts, and you can have good storylines to go with it. It's another thing. A lot of these promotions of today that have a niche following don't always necessarily have like a lot of storylines going on. They'll have a few, but their promotions are not storyline driven. It's about matches and seeing individuals work that platform. That's why the Matt Cardona stuff, he had one hardcore match in his life, and think about it. People calling him a king of the hardcore and king of the death match and all this other stuff. And it was ridiculous after a couple of years, but he just turned it into something, gave it a life of its own from one freaking match. So you see these matches, people want to see, hey, I want to see that match under that platform, under that style, under that identity. And it could be a match you've seen somewhere else, but they still are interested in seeing it. I think that's why Natty gets a little bit extra love when she works some of these shows, because they don't want to see the same Natty that, takes the glasses off and the hat off and gives it to a little kid at ringside. They want to see her walk out with the fucking mouthpiece with saying fuck you to everybody, acting like she's going to beat up all the men in the building, suddenly like she's that time in a month, so different. It's a different style. People want to see a little bit different. So Bobby Means, what's up, my friend? Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate you, man. Bobby says, I don't know why we still see the letter R. I think everybody's a letter R tonight. Everybody's a letter R. But Bobby Means says there were a lot of dream matches. R stands for You Rock. There were a lot of dream matches that we never got in the WWE. The one that stands out to him was Brock Lesnar versus Shawn Michaels. Now we got a tease for it. We had a tease for it in 2002 Why do I think it never happened? To me, it reminds me of the same thing with The Rock. Reminds me of the same thing with The Rock. You know, a lot of people don't remember this, but Rock left right around the time that that Shawn Michaels was coming back into his own. Then you had Hollywood Rock. I think he returned and Shawn Michaels retired. I just think the timing was different, especially because of what was going on with Shawn Michaels at that time. Brock Lesnar, you know, he was labeled as the next big thing. The guy was unstoppable, a maniac, managed by Paul Heyman. But the thing at that time was, think back to last week's history show. Last week was the anniversary of Brock Lesnar versus Hulk Hogan. And when that match happened, you know, like people were, you know, writing online like, oh my God, he's going to make Hulk Hogan bleed. He's got him in a bear hug. He's killing Hulk Hogan. He's, you know, that. So I just feel that as far as creative wise, who would have went over? I think it would have, like, I don't think this was a case. I'd see, that's why to me, it was so intriguing with Steve Austin and Brock Lesnar, because this was going to be, what, a King of the Ring qualifying match? And Steve was like, nah, this should be pay-per-view. Quite honestly, my friends, I never believed that in that sense unless he was going over. Like, if you're going to lose to Brock Lesnar, like Steve Austin at that time was not known to be doing a job for a lot of people, and no, he shouldn't have. So if Steve Austin felt that this match is bigger and should be on a pay-per-view, I think on a bigger platform to get destroyed by Brock Lesnar or lose, I don't think that's something that Steve Austin necessarily would have liked. I just think it's timing. I think at that time, utilizing Brock Lesnar the way they did, you know, this is Shawn Michaels on the rebound. This is Shawn Michaels, you know, returning, and right away, you know, you're focused around Triple H and a little bit of D-Generation X and the fallout from that. So I just feel timing-wise, it just never felt like it was going to cross that path. Just like The Rock. If you really look up The Rock and Shawn Michaels, I mean, I know early on there were reports that DX hated The Rock, and, you know, I think some people made allegations that, you know, they were racial on him and this. And yes, I remember the Nation of Domination cosplay and all that, but a lot of people thought there was a lot of backstage friction with Rock and DX and Triple H and Shawn Michaels. So it's a very intriguing story if you've never seen it, but I think it was just more about timing. There were other matches that we absolutely could have seen, but it just the stars never aligned. There are matches now that people would have liked to have seen, and it just seems like it's not going on. I'm not talking about Obafemi matches. I'm talking about people that have been around for a while. You know, it's kind of crazy to think, you know, when CM Punk fought AJ Styles, you think back like how long it took. Or sometimes you hear a veteran facing someone on WWE television, like this is the first time they're ever facing each other. And you're like, holy shit. You know, so sometimes it's just timing. And I think just the way Brock Lesnar was being used in 2002, you know, I think that's the year I did the autograph signing for him. That guy had an aura that I don't think they wanted to destroy Shawn Michaels that quickly. And I don't think they wanted Shawn Michaels or to destroy him. So I just think it was a bad recipe. There were just some people you just didn't want to see cross paths, because you always want to have a feud where both people end up better. Sure, somebody's got to win the feud and should be a little bit better on the food chain, but the idea is that both are better off than not having the feud at all. That's why Obafemi and Brock Lesnar. To me, that's tremendous. I don't care what Bischoff or anybody else said that they thought the storyline was stupid. Obafemi is so much more better off now having those 3 matches instead of facing who? You know, Otis, Austin Theory. You know what I mean? Like, if you think about the roster, you know, Rusev, you know, like if they would have spent other people like that against Obafemi, would have had that same impact? No. And to see Brock Lesnar and hear more of how much he wanted to get Oba to the next level. Reminded me of Omos. He wanted to do that for Omos, but WWE Creative was not thinking the same thing. So when you hear Brock and then seeing Brock give this much to Oba, makes Brock look 10 times better. I know there's some people out there that, are still reaming him for, finding Janelle Grant sexy. But the thing is, Brock Lesnar, it seems he's more, he's much better of a person now compared to 10 years ago. Feels like he tried to give back a little bit. So to me, I'd rather see Brock Lesnar retire after giving this much to Oba than to be selfish. Because some people are forced into retirement, and there's nothing you can do about it. Sometimes what your projection is not what is mapped out to be. Believe it or not, I know this is weird, but I was talking to somebody yesterday who's friends with a baseball player. Some of you may have heard of him. His name is George Foster. And George Foster was infamous for the Cincinnati Reds, the big red machine from the 70s. Guy was a maniac. Came to the Mets in 1982, was nowhere near the player he was before that. And halfway in 1986, he made some comments because he was being benched because he wasn't playing well. And the Mets were using like Kevin Mitchell, Mookie Wilson, and Danny Heap to play left field instead. And he brought up race. And he said in the comments, he's like, look, you're saying like, Darryl Strawberry's not your quintessential role model and this and that. And trying to play off that because, it may not be race, but it could be. And he claims it was taken out of context. Why am I saying all this? He got released in 86 and he went to the White Sox. I was talking to somebody about him over the weekend because he happens to be, friends with him. And when he went to the White Sox, he must have had like maybe 350 home runs, around that. I don't know exactly how many home runs. But one thing that we were talking about was when he went to the White Sox, his goal was to get to 400 home runs and then maybe stick around for 4 or 5 more years and get to 500 home runs. George Foster would end up having only 1 home run in the remainder of his entire major league career. By the end of 1986, he was done. Nobody signed him. So he was like at 340 home runs, and he thought he was going to get to 400. No problem at all. He only had 1 more home run in his career, and that was it. He was done. So sometimes what you plan your retirement to be and what ends up happening is 2 totally different things. We've seen wrestlers retire, and it feels like they didn't give anything back. I blame some of that on creative because creative should put those people in a position where they're not necessarily forced to give back, but put them in a position where it feels like they're giving back a little bit. And sometimes people's contracts just get cut and that's it. You think about it. Some people in WWE end up getting cut and their retirement match, or the path to a retirement doesn't happen the way they thought it would. And what happens if WWE doesn't bring them back and then 2-3 years from now they have a significant injury and they really can't go anymore? That retirement match never happens. That final feud never happens. The person who everybody thought they were going to pass the torch to never happens. A lot of people, I know this is a little unfair, but a lot of people not too long ago was thinking about Lita and who is Lita going to pass the torch to on the current roster of today? And then next thing you know, it turns into a little bit of Trish, and you see a little bit of what's her face, Zoe Stark, and you see where this all went. And it was like, and it felt like Tiffany Stratton got a little bit more of a rub from Trish Stratus than anybody else. But I don't even know if that was intended that way originally. Just sometimes it's just not in the cards. Sometimes it's strictly contract and done. So that's why I find what Brock did so much more important than I think people realize. Because you take away those 3 matches with Brock and Oba, you just think to yourself, what would have Oba been doing the last couple of months? Maybe he would have had the feud with Penta. Would it have felt different? Would it have felt like he got to another level? No, I don't think so. All right. Franchise says that he said he was a role model. George Foster was also one of the highest salary guys. He was the highest paid salary guy. Mets cut him because he started bringing up race. And then it hit the papers, and the Mets were like, no. Nah, we're not going to go for that. And they cut him. The White Sox signed him for like, I don't know, $20,000, $30,000. The guy was getting paid millions with the Mets, and White Sox got him for like 20 grand, 30 grand. So he probably would have been released anyway, but he opened his mouth up, and the minute he started talking about race and role models and all this other stuff, that's it. He sealed his fate. I was happy to see him return for the reunions later on, but a lot of people never forgave him for what he said in '86. Funny thing is, some people on the Mets team actually bought into what George Foster said. Ended up not being true. All right. Yeah, Lita Salruka. I mean, we all feel Salruka, her look reminds us a lot of Lita. All Salruka needs is a thong. It's sticking out a little more. And I'm not trying to be perverted. I'm just saying, if anybody remembers Lita's look, she literally reminds us a lot of Lita's look from back in the day. To me, it's like a combination of Michelle McCool meets Lita. Like, she looks a little bit like Michelle McCool, but has a style like Lita, even a little bit of offense like Lita. I mean, I think that would have been fun, but I don't think Lita could go. Roderick says, what do I think of Conrad's comments on Roman Reigns? Well, I've touched on this a little bit before. I'll answer it like this. Conrad showed me another reason why I like him so much, because I responded to what he said, and we had a friendly back and forth about it. When he said that Roman Reigns is overrated, without Paul Heyman, he's nothing, this and that, and he brought up how, look at the years of the heat he was getting from the fans, and he aligned with Paul and everything changed. That is a very, very loose version of it, because remember, the pandemic hit, and being able to dictate, the noise in Thunderdome and, the tone in Roman Reigns, you pretty much, they had a vision. They had a vision, WWE and Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman, they had a vision. And pandemic allowed them to execute that so one-sided, because you didn't have to worry about the fans in the crowd. When Roman Reigns is cutting a promo for Jey Uso, when they get a fight in a cage, and you didn't have to worry about the fans in Thunderdome going, what? Like, all you had was white noise. You didn't have to worry about Thunderdome fans booing him, because all you got to do is hit the sound bar on your mixer and cheers. This is awesome. I was in Thunderdome, 13 times? I remember how it worked. But my point is, I brought up Eddie Guerrero, and I said, look at Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero was shitted on by the WWE Universe. He ended up getting released because of problems, came back, and became beloved before he ever died. And then young people of today that never lived through it, they're like, well, he had Chavo Guerrero. Well, he had this. No, you don't understand. You don't understand, because Eddie Guerrero, through his personality and putting it in the ring, made everybody fall in love with him. What I said to Conrad is that Paul Heyman absolutely put a seat at the table for Roman Reigns. But every time Roman Reigns has a match, he shows us why he's earned that spot at the table. Like, if you never rode a bike before, and I'm behind you, I'm Paul Heyman, you're Roman Reigns, never rode a bike before, and I have training wheels on your bike, and I'm pushing you, and you're riding the bike, and everything's good and everything, and then I take the training wheels off. Now I push that motherfucker, and you're on that bike, and I let go. Every time Roman Reigns wrestled a match, once they started doing the tribal chief, that's being let go of the bike. And Roman Reigns showed why he belonged at the table. Paul Heyman set the table for him. And Roman showed why he should be at that table. And that's where I think Conrad gets it wrong. And I made a prediction. I made a prediction on Patreon last week. I said Conrad, in about a week or two, once this all dies down a little bit, Conrad will retract and say, maybe I was a little bit harsh, or maybe I didn't think about it like this, but there's no question that Paul Heyman, without him, and of course, without somebody doesn't get an opportunity. You could say that about anybody who's been successful in wrestling. Without this person wouldn't have gotten an opportunity. This person with this. Paul Heyman absolutely is what got Roman Reigns to the next level. But Roman Reigns took it and ran with it. And that's why, to me, I don't know if I would call Roman Reigns one of the greatest of all time. I think he's a big fish in a big pond, no question. But I also believe you have a lot of Hall of Famers now who have had great, successful, long careers. But you take away the pandemic, I don't know where Roman Reigns would be right now. Do I think he would be near the top? Absolutely. But that pandemic, a lot of people don't take a step back and think about it. That pandemic allowed WWE to present him the way that they saw it, and the fans were not going to manipulate that. And that is a big boost, man. That is a big boost. But so I thought his comments were a little shallow. I think overrated, I think, is a stretch. Especially when you look at numbers and revenue, and not any one person does it, but Roman being at the top, how do you dispute that? You could give people credit, but to turn around and call him overrated, I think that might be a little bit excessive. So, but I love Conrad because he responded to me and we had a little bit of a back and forth, and it was very respectful. I love being able to debate with people and have a respectful back and forth, and, not necessarily who wins and who loses the argument, but, to talk about it. So props on him. Twix, my thoughts on Dixie Carter. Designing Women, I watched that show for a couple of years. I thought it was okay. After a while, I got very annoyed at it. As far as the women's wrestling promoter for TNA, I think she should have had other people running the company a little bit more and her a little bit less. I truthfully believe that she loved wrestling. I truthfully believe that she wanted TNA to be a major success. I think that she just fell under the spell of some people. I think she fell under the spell with Hogan, with Bischoff. I think some of the people on that team, I don't know if you went back to the days of Mr. Mystery with us, with the Minority Report, DTKC. But when we were being fed a lot of dirt about TNA at the time, she was surrounded by yes men. People were just, tell her what she wanted to hear. And because they probably wouldn't get that opportunity in WWE, and there wasn't a whole lot of options available that pay him big time money, that they would just go along with a lot of what she did. And unfortunately, it hurt the company probably more than it helped it. Listen, when Hogan debuted on TNA, they popped a pretty nice rating. When he came out, it was like 1.6 million people. That's pretty damn impressive, even if it was how many years ago. It's still very impressive. It's just, unfortunately, she hurt the company too much. Just says Conrad would love to bring me into his network. If Conrad wants me on, man, just to talk wrestling, I would love to have him on. I plan on bringing Conrad on here in the future. I want it to mean something. I want to have fun. I want to have some friendly convo with him. I have always stuck up for him, even with some of my co-hosts back in the day. We would have a difference of opinion with Conrad, but Conrad's a hustler. Conrad is a hustler, but he tells you he's hustling, and he works very, very hard. He'll tell you, I actually referred a couple of my customers to him for mortgages. I don't think he was able to help any of them, more because of state regulations. But, I think Conrad is legit. I mean, but he's a hustler, man. He's a businessman. Some of the stuff, I will criticize him on, but I have a lot of respect for that guy. There are people that not everybody gets the gas face. Don Tony don't give the gas face to everybody. Conrad is one of those that, I like. I like him. All right. Let's see. Let's get some questions in. Tristan wants to know my thoughts on the WCW finger poke of doom. Why did it shit the bed? It just sucked. It just sucked. Kevin Nash standing on the front of the TV and Hogan doing the finger poke of doom, and Tony Schiavone's like, what? Wait, what's going on here? And it was just like stupid. It was stupid. Even when Jeff Jarrett laid down for Hogan and then walked off, and then Russo cut his promo, nobody wants to see that. You may not remember this, but we kind of had a much more entertaining version of that. Some of you will remember this. Some of you will go out of your way to watch this now since I brought it up. My memory's not all shot. Who remembers when I think it was Triple H defending the Intercontinental Championship against Shawn Michaels? Or was it vice versa? I don't remember what title. Maybe it was the European title, but Sergeant Slaughter insisted on that match. Sergeant Slaughter was the commissioner, and DX used to make fun of Sergeant Slaughter. Whenever he talked, he would spit. They had the windshield wipers and everything. So he forced two D-Generation X members to face each other for the title. And watch that match. Watch Triple H and Shawn Michaels running the ropes and running the ropes and running the ropes and turning the match into a farce. That's how you do it. You're trolling the commissioner. All right, you want us to fight each other? Yeah, this is what we'll do. That's how you do it. This finger poke thing just to show that it was just not well received. And thank you very much, Roderick. It was the European title, 1997. I kind of had a feel it was a European title. Hilarious. Some of you out there have never seen it. It's 30 years old. Just watch it. It's a funny match, and Slaughter's reaction to it is even better. To do it just to piss off your audience, that's one thing. With Shawn Michaels and Triple H, they were pissing off Slaughter, but there was so many DX fans, they thought it was funny. I think JR did commentary too, and JR was ripping all over it too. So I'm telling you, go watch it. Oh, and it was Shawn defending. So, all right, so Shawn defending, and it was the European title in 1997. But I just remember them running the ropes. And Triple H, I think he 3 steps, right? I think it was 3 steps, and he's just like jogging across the ropes. It's funny, man. And just they trolled Slaughter. That was one of my favorite underappreciated moments about the Attitude Era, when DX would go after Slaughter. I mean, some of that stuff I couldn't stop laughing. And it's a shame because nobody brings it up anymore, not even the Slaughter, but that DX stuff that they were doing to him, man, they brutalized that guy. They brutalized him. And it was funny shit. Yeah, Shawn Michaels overselling for Hulk Hogan was also stupid. It was also, it was embarrassing. It was funny, don't get me wrong, but it was embarrassing because, say what you want about Hogan, all right, whatever. But the thing is, Hogan at that point was larger than life, way past his prime, iconic, had reached the status that fans wanted to see the hulking up and the nostalgia, and even a couple of punches in a boot had an effect. And Shawn Michaels felt that he worked so much harder that, he wasn't going to, like if he had to go with that shit, he was going to make it look ridiculous. It was what it was, but, I'm not going to lie, I kind of felt bad for Hogan that night. Because, it's kind of like what we used to say about Mankind. When Mankind first started doing the mandible claw, I remember we met him at an autograph signing. And I remember somebody saying to him, like, how come people don't just bite down on your finger? And then I don't remember what video WWE did a couple of years later. I think it was him or someone else said, like, all I got to do is just bite on my finger and that's it. I break the move. Like, you stick your fingers down my throat. I know some people like, well, if you touch the tonsils, you kind of like lose all. Like, no, man. You just bite down and it's like, okay, I got to break the move. Some moves, if you really think about it, were very easy to break. Just I kind of felt bad for Hogan because it just took his whole gimmick and just exposed what Hulkamania was about in a lot of ways. It was, that's why I always put over the Japan stuff. You watch him in Japan, it's like a totally different person because Japan, they wouldn't mind a little bit of the antics, but it couldn't only be that. He had to work hard too, so. All right. Let's see. Who's got a question? Let's start. How much time? We've gone 90 minutes already. We'll stay another half hour. We shall stay another half hour. So what do you guys think? Are you confident that WWE is going to give a little momentum for Chelsea Green? Because the thing is, now with this 30-day thing, we're not going to have that much going on in 30 days. So what happens 30 days from now? Is she not ready? And then we're going to feel even sorry for her, even sorrier, and you know what I mean? Like, I'm curious where this goes in 30 days because I don't know if it's going to happen much, especially when we just saw JC Jane win a championship. Like that kind of overshadows Chelsea Green in a lot of ways. I mean, I get it. It's the United States championship, but still, JC Jane getting that title. I mean, we all knew that Fatal Influence was all going to have gold eventually. That's why it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Roxanne Perez. As long as Liv and Raquel have belts, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with her. Remember, they can always give Roxanne Perez a AAA title. Something that a lot of people don't think about. Roxanne Perez could win some form of a championship in AAA and walk around with that with the Judgment Day. So you can't always keep thinking about, yeah, she might win Money in the Bank. She might get the briefcase. And who knows, maybe she cashes in a Mania on one of her friends. I don't think they'll hold the belt that long, but who knows? But that doesn't mean that she can't win a title in a different way. So, yeah, the JC winning was about moving in Chelsea and Tiffany's storylines forward. Absolutely agree. I mean, JC Jane, there was a little bit of concern the last couple of weeks about her usage. A lot of people were looking, just like the Blake Monroe stuff. I mean, we got to realize is that there are more people on the roster than you think. They haven't done their releases yet. You have some releases on the horizon. Don't know how soon, but you have some releases coming in a very, very near future. Absolutely within a month. Within a month, you could have some releases. I mean, it might be give or take a week, but there's some releases coming. Who it is, I'm not going to sit here and speculate. But the thing is, you see how many people that they're kind of rotating with. There was a little bit of concern of some people just not getting utilized. That's why last week somebody had super shouted me and asked about Blake Monroe. And I said, I think she wrestles in a week or two. I don't think they're going to hold it. I don't think they're nervous. I don't think they're afraid. I don't think there was anything more of, right now we got some other things going on. Let's focus on that. And now with Rhea's injury and Chelsea Green's injury, now that opens up a little bit more of an opportunity. So we shall see. Bobby Beans wants my opinion about New Jack injuring Gypsy Joe with a baseball bat. Listen, I was friends with New Jack. I'm not just saying that. Many of you know a lot of the stories behind the scenes with New Jack. For me, the most infamous one was when he thought that I was going to wrestle him in Florida, and he blew up my personal Facebook page, and I had aunts and uncles seeing posts of him threatening to slice me and cut me up and kill me, call me a fat motherfucker and all this other stuff. And then he did not, and then I, literally 3 o'clock in the morning this happened. And then I fucking got a hold of him and, you know, resolved the situation. But, you know, that guy was a really, really nice guy. You know, I know he was very, very controversial. I mean, I could sit here and tell stories involving me and New Jack for hours, especially when you think of the Terry Reynolds photos and some of the other stuff. But here's my point. If you were going to work with New Jack, especially in latter years, New Jack was not going to deal with someone who was inexperienced, someone that wanted to go into business for themselves, somebody was trying to just get their own shit over. When you think of the mass transit incident, in no way, shape, or form should that have happened to that kid. And unfortunately, he's dead. I mean, not because of that, but he died very young because of his health. But still, when you got somebody who claims to be older than 16, who looks like Ralph Cramden, and he walks in the ECW locker room and he starts telling people, yeah, I want to do this, and yeah, let's do this, and I think this is a great idea, and I don't think this is a good, you know, Devon's like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And New Jack did what he did. All right, I watched New Jack sometimes beat someone a little bit, legit, because, they were trying to put themselves over in a way, they shouldn't have been. I watched him wrestle in USA Pro Wrestling once. I don't remember who it was, but it was somebody local. And he hit them over the head with I think with a keyboard or something. And the guy just stood there. And I remember he grabbed a golf club and literally hit him in the nuts with it. And afterwards, he was pissed because the guy, it wasn't that the guy was trying to be tough. It was just that he didn't know how to sell really all that well. So I'm getting to the Gypsy Joe thing. With me, for some people that don't know the story, I'll be very, very quick with it. Several years ago, Mass Maniac was going to do a reunion show in Florida. He invited me to be part of it. And I was going to manage probably Low Life Louis Ramos against New Jack. So the idea was I was going to manage someone against New Jack. A lot of you remember my infamous New Jack in the Box that never happened. That was something I wanted to do with New Jack, and he was all for it. And somebody sabotaged that. So anyway, that's the deal. So I went on social media and I said, I'm looking forward to, seeing you in Florida, and, we'll have a lot of fun and this and that. He interpreted that I was going to face him one-on-one. So about 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, my phone goes off in my house, and it's Mish from Wrestling Soup when we used to all be buddies. He's like, I think you should check your Facebook page right now. And I was like, why? What's going on? Now, I had 2 Facebook pages. I had one for the show, but I also had one for me personally. And my personal Facebook page has people I grew up with, people I've gone to school with, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, nobody in wrestling. There was maybe 4 or 5 people in wrestling that I allowed on my personal page. Mish was one of them. Kev was another. New Jack was one. Maniac was one. There was 5 or 6. So Mish is no, you need to look at your page now. I go on my personal Facebook page, and it's New Jack threatening to kill me. And he's calling me a fat motherfucker. I'm going to slice your fat fucking ass and this and that. And, Frank, you better fucking make this better. Because the last thing he wanted in the final years of his wrestling career is to be facing someone that doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, thinking that, I just want to be a hardcore legend, so let me have New Jack beat me up. That was his mindset. So when I wrote to him and I said, New Jack, no, I don't want to face you. I'm going to manage someone against you. And he just wrote back. He said, my bad. And I talked to him the next day, and he couldn't stop laughing. And I'm like, you do realize, I have aunts and uncles that don't even know who Hulk Hogan is, that sees some black guy threatening to slice me and kill me, and you look at your forehead looks like a fucking map. And he was laughing hysterical. But the thing was, even though I was friends with him, and even though, I did some favors for him in the past, the minute he thought that somebody inexperienced, somebody maybe wanted to get themselves over at his expense, no matter who it is, he wasn't going to have it. So when you hear stuff like what happened with Gypsy Joe or Mass Transit or something else, it's usually someone that either doesn't go along with the program or has no business being in a match, or sometimes takes things in a wrong direction. And unfortunately, New Jack will snap. So, that's how I look at it. I mean, no, I don't think you should ever hit somebody with a baseball bat. That's why New Jack had warrants out for his arrest. It wasn't just, not answering a court ticket. The infamous one where I fucking bailed him out of jail. He got arrested. He was supposed to work an indie show, I think in either Florida or New Jersey. And he couldn't do it because he got arrested and he didn't have money for bail. And I actually put up his bail. It's a true story. A lot of people know that story. But, if you're going to do something with New Jack, especially in the final years of his career, you better either, number one, know what you're doing, have a track record so he can check and make sure. If I keep doing this, I don't do no, nose candy. I have a little bit of a cold. So you might see me just some antics. You could see my nose is red. I have fucking tissues right here. So yeah, I mean, the answer is never to do what New Jack did, but, sometimes you just understood it. When the mass transit thing happened, a lot of people felt bad for the kid, but a lot of people also like, hey man, he did that to himself, and the father was sitting in the audience, and the father had no problem with his 16-year-old. I mean, you think of, what's that fucking guy with the in AEW now, the two fucking kids that are going to end up being diabetic? So they're not, who's the kid that goes like this, someone in the chat room bailed me out. Big Pussy, what's his name? Big Beefy? Who's the little kid, that's with the social media family that like to eat cookies? No one knows? In AEW? Do I have to look it up? Little chubby kid, Rizzler and Big Boom AJ. I knew it was Big something. No, I say Big Pussy. Rizzler. I mean, look at this guy and look at Rizzler. Rizzler looks like he's doing aerobics. Rizzler looks like he's in shape. Rizzler looks like he's in phenomenal shape compared to Mass Transit. 16-year-old having that kind of body. You're just asking to be dead before you're 30. So, the Rizzler. Yeah, the one goes like this, You know what's funny? And I say this not to be a prick, but I think of childhood actors, like growing up in the 70s, and you hear about these childhood actors that end up just being complete train wrecks once they got older. Even Macaulay Culkin, if we're being honest. There was some years after Home Alone when he didn't look like the nice little kid anymore that's, like screaming. That wears off. I can't wait till the Rizzler is like a 17-year-old fat kid. It's going to remind me of me. He's going to remind me of me. He's going to be 17, 18 years old, and he's just going to look like a chubby kid. And then what do? The cute little, oh, look at his cheeks. After a while, it's like a childhood actor. Problem is, for Rizzler, there's no fucking Fantasy Island or Love Boat TV series that you could go on for a guest appearance because nobody wants to hire you. What are you going to do? So, am I wrong? Seriously, does anybody think about that? You think chocolate, chunk, chicken, chip, whatever. I told you, you keep doing that, by the time they're in their mid-20s, they're going to be half blind because they're going to be diabetic. And you're going to do a GoFundMe, help my kid. My kid's got to do all these tests. He's got to be on insulin. And, I fear that's what's going to happen. Listen, it kind of reminds me of Goldberg's son. But at least Goldberg's son looked at the picture in the ring with his dad without his shirt on. And I guarantee he probably walked to school afterwards. And everybody's laughing oh, he's got little girly titties. You look at him He's like, oh my God, he's like the little State Puff Marshmallow Man. And Goldberg's son was like, fuck that. And Goldberg's son turned into a monster. Say it to my face. You know, hey, tell me what I look like back in the day. Tell it to my face now. Nobody's going to say a damn thing to Goldberg's son. I think that happens to Rizzler one day. I think one day Rizzler, when he looks in the mirror and suddenly the cheeks don't look cute no more, and then puberty kicks in, and he sounds like a man, that's when he's going to turn around and he's going to be like, man, I better fucking drop the weight. Chocolate, protein shakes. So. Larry Jester, do I think either of these guys, Bossman, Jake Roberts, Brutus Beefcake, Taz, Saturn, Vader, Bam Bam Bigelow should have had WWE, WWF, or the IC title? Well, growing up at that time, Big Boss Man, Jake the Snake Roberts, Brutus Beefcake, Taz, Saturn, Bam Bam Bigelow, every single one of them should not have gotten the WWF title. Vader is the only one on that list that I would have put a world championship on. Vader was good enough, intimidating enough, and was a badass. Especially after what happened with the Singapore Kane incident. What country was that? Was it Singapore? When he went there and he was doing a TV show with Undertaker and some other guy, and they were threatening to put him in jail with Singapore, Kuwait. Good Morning Kuwait, I think was the name of that show. That's the time like I would have fucking somehow got the belt on him. As far as IC title, Big Boss Man, I could have seen have it. Jake Roberts, absolutely, without a doubt. Brutus Beefcake, I could see at some point. Taz, it's funny because Taz came in, had that debut match against Kurt Angle in WWE, tremendous, and you realize quickly that, WWE was more infatuated with ECW and not necessarily individuals, other than Rob Van Dam, I think, more than anything. I never felt Taz was going to be in a position to get a significant WWE championship. It was just my honest feeling, and especially when he won the title after the Mike Awesome disaster. And then what did they do? Like right after he defeats, you had him beat Dreamer, if I remember correctly. But when Taz choked out Mike Awesome, and Taz became the champion. And literally, I think like 2 days later, WWF, or 3 days later, they put Taz versus Triple H on SmackDown. Triple H, I think, was the world champion. Taz was the ECW champion. And this was very one-sided, this match. And we were like, why is Triple H fighting Taz after he just won the ECW title? And then we kind of realized, oh, okay, this is what they truly feel about it. So I don't think Taz would have gotten a significant belt. The others on that list, Saturn, maybe with the IC belt. Bam Bam Bigelow, absolutely IC belt. But as far as all those names, Vader's the only one I would have put the world title on. A lot of people who did not grow up at that time, as people pass on for more years, they become more legendary. You'll have a shitload of people that'll convince you now that if Owen Hart never passed away, he would have been WWF champion. As much as I loved Owen Hart, as much as I was a fan of his way back in Calgary, there was never a time that anybody on my hotline or anybody that I interacted with, anybody ever thought that Owen Hart was possibly going to become world champion. Never. Even when he had the feud with Bret Hart around, what was it, WrestleMania 10? Never did anybody ever think Owen Hart would have been the champion. It was a great storyline, but no one ever thought. And even when Bret screwed Bret and went to WCW and Owen was jumping the guardrail and like cheap shotting like Triple H or DX or something and run off, no one at that time thought, oh, they're positioning him to put the belt on him. But as the years go by and he is longer deceased, people will tell you more and more, Owen would have definitely been world champion if he stuck around. They do that with Brian Pillman now too. Look, Brian Pillman. This is an original Brian Pillman shirt from 1996. Look, I'm not kidding. See the back? This is a legitimate Brian Pillman shirt from 1996 from ECW. I am a huge fan of Brian Pillman. And I will tell you, Brian Pillman was never going to become World Wrestling Federation heavyweight champion at that time. No, not even close. But for some reason, people say that. It's kind of, that's why that guy Fade on X pisses me off so much. And just, because you got Zilla Fatu debuts. And what does this guy write? I don't want to call him an asshole, but just like anything for ad revenue. He says Umaga was 0-4 in world title matches. I think Zilla Fatu needs to finish Umaga's story. I was around when Umaga was feuding. Did anybody ever think Umaga was to become world champion at that time? No. But here's this guy on X, because Zilla Fatu makes his debut. Umaga's 0-4. Zilla should, and what do you get? You get 20,000 people like, oh, you're so right. Umaga deserved better. Meanwhile, half these motherfuckers weren't even embryos at the time. They weren't around when Umaga was there. No one at the time ever said, I think WWE's going to put the belt on him. I think he's going to beat Cena. I think he's going to be Alberto Del Rio. I think he's going to be this one. No, it wasn't in the cards. It's not a shot on Umaga. Not everybody could be world champion. Soapbox Ant wants to know my thoughts on the crucifixion angle in ECW. Honestly, I thought Kurt Angle was a little ridiculous that night. Kurt Angle made an appearance. If you ever go back to the history show, we even have the screenshot. He showed up in the ECW arena. And I don't know if he was going to do commentary. I don't know if he was actually going to hit anybody with suplex. I don't think so, but they did the crucifixion angle with Raven and Sandman, where Sandman was like Jesus on the cross. And even put barbed wire on his head, and Kurt Angle was so upset at what he saw, he stormed out of the building. Now, hear me out. I learned later on, Kurt Angle is a very religious man, and was very, very pissed off that wrestling company in Philadelphia, because he's from Pittsburgh, brings him in as a guest, and on that show, they're mocking the crucifixion. To me, it was unnecessary. It was unnecessary. With the Raven stuff, it was spectacular. When they incorporated Sandman's son, even Lori Fullington for a while, and she looked like she was a crackhead, like you truly believed that Raven got in control of Sandman's family, and he's losing his wife, he's losing his son. They could have done this so differently. I don't think the crucifixion thing was necessary. Obviously, WWF did their own sort of version of it when they put Stephanie on the Undertaker symbol, and people like, oh, that looks a little bit like crucifixion. And then Steve Austin ended up on the symbol, and then they raised it in the air, and Steve Austin. But the difference was Steve Austin wasn't laying there like this. You go back. I mean, if anybody ever sees, I'm not trying to be funny, but I'm trying to be lighthearted about it. If anybody ever goes to a church, or you go into somebody's house and they have a cross on their wall, if you ever look at one closely online, Jesus is nailed to the cross, and if you look at his face, it's not like, there's death, pain, unconsciousness. It's sad. It's hard. It's rough. It's in your face. When Sandman got crucified in ECW, Sandman did this. He acted like he was dead. He acted like he was crucified. And that's what made it even worse. When Steve Austin was put on the Undertaker symbol and raised up, Steve Austin wasn't like this. Steve Austin's like looking around like, what the fuck's going on here? You know, like I'm going to whip your ass. Like, it was different. It felt different. It didn't feel like a crucifixion. So that's my take on it. The ECW stuff was unnecessary. You know, I could understand, you know, with Raven and having the control and doing everything he was doing, but I didn't think they needed to go that far. As far as Lola Vice's first opponent or feud on the main roster, well, number one, we got to see where she debuts. Personally, I don't know why, man. I want to see her on Raw. I know most of you say she's going to be on SmackDown with her boyfriend, Damian Priest. But I could see her on Raw. I could see her and Stephanie Vicaire. I could see her and Raquel Rodriguez. I could see her and Roxanne Perez. I could see her ultimately with Becky fucking Lynch, no question about it. Like, I could see, honestly, 6 women right off the bat that I could see her having some great shit with. When I look at SmackDown, like, I don't know if her and Jade Cargill is a good blend. Like, I almost feel like she might get Nia Jax, or she might get Kiana James. You know what I mean? Like, I think that could, I don't know. I'm not feeling SmackDown with Lola Vice. So I think we got to figure out who because look, if she debuts on Raw, she could face Ivy Nile. Even though Ivy Nile's done pretty damn good. You know, I don't think it's Maxine Dupree. By the way, I don't think she legitimately hit her head. I think that was all a setup. I think, because why would you have the camera paced perfectly there and you're walking by and they knew that, I think as she walked by, I think somebody in the background slapped like a piece of metal to make it sound like she banged her head. I think that was all done. I don't think she truly hit her head. So, but yeah, it's hard to tell, but you know, the thing is, I'm getting the vibe that she's going to debut on SmackDown. Not necessarily because of Damian Priest, but especially with Rhea's injury, it feels like a lot of, how do I say this the right way? SmackDown feels like a lot of supporting actresses. You know, when you have a movie, best actor, best actress, best supporting actor, best supporting actress. Like, SmackDown reminds you of a lot of supporting actors and actresses. I mean, actresses, I say, not actors, because you got Cody and CM Punk and everybody else. But on the women's side of things, I mean, there are some women. Charlotte Flair is still, you know, can still go. But it feels like a lot of just a bunch of people on the women's side. So that's why I kind of think Lola Vice may end up going there. So, Addicted to Games says SmackDown gives him the vibes back when Paul Heyman took over, when it had Eddie and Edge. Let me tell you something. A lot of people prefer 2 hours over 3 hours with SmackDown. And it's not just because 3 hours is a lot to sit and ingest, especially if a show's not doing good, it's kind of like dragging on. But 2 hours forces you to cram in more. It forces you to get to the point more. It forces you to sometimes go outside the box a little bit. When you have a lot of time, you could just throw things out there and try this and that, and you get a little bit sloppy because you feel there's no time constraints. Like, even, I'm not trying to compare it to my shows, but when I do Wednesday, for Wednesday Night Dynamite, I always try to keep those shows about an hour. Sometimes it goes a few minutes over, sometimes it goes a few minutes under. But my goal on Wednesday is always keep it around an hour. And I get into a shitload of topics. But on Wednesdays, I'm forced to move on much, much sooner. I don't stay on any one topic for 10 minutes. We get into the meat and potatoes, in your face, And then we move on. Then we move on. Then we move on. So I think SmackDown being 2 hours, you can get away with a couple of talking segments, a match here and there, and, people will feel somewhat content. I did find it interesting that they were advertising Cody and Obafemi taking on the Vision Friday, and they ended up doing Tozawa and Obafemi. So, I understand why they did it after seeing the Cody Randy Orton stuff, but still, you were advertising that up until that moment. You gave everybody Tozawa and Obafemi instead. So, yeah. But yeah, no, I like the 2 hour structure. That's why, like I said, with those 5 segments, WWE's not that careless. I don't think anybody in their right mind thinks that WWE aired us 5 TV segments. On Friday, aired us 5 TV segments, and they originally were planning on giving us 10. What era have we seen that? Like, really? Like, how do you cut that many? That was all done by design. Not every segment is going to make the main show. You throw some of it on YouTube as a bonus. People feel like they're getting extra. See, what WWE's doing right now is the same mentality like I talk about when I go to the casino, when I go to Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. You go into a restaurant inside that place. It's very expensive. But what they'll do is they'll really load up your plate. And you're sitting there like, I can't eat all this much. Thank God they let you order from the children's menu. But the idea is we'd rather bang you out for a little extra money, but then put a shitload back. So their idea of giving us more is putting some clips on YouTube. I'll take it because I'm watching it from home. I'll take it. But that's their idea of giving us more. And that's by using, and they should use YouTube. You have a huge roster there of people. And look even Gargano. Like, they could have put a segment of Gargano on YouTube. They could have put a segment, there's so many others that they could have put, and they didn't. So you're forcing yourself to really start just fine-tuning the show and just threading the needle that much more because you have an hour less to fill. And you could get away with a couple of, segments that aren't going to make the show. But forcing someone to be more on point, and I think that's why the Kevin Owens CM Punk thing is working so well. Kevin Owens returned, got himself in a match he had no business being in. I'm not complaining. Wins the number 1 contendership. Feels very thrown together like everything else we've seen recently with WWE outside of Ober and Brock. And people are enjoying it. And it feels like, there might be some legitimate issues amongst the guys. And I like, the teasing, bringing up a little bit of the Ring of Honor days and even AEW because you want people to believe it. In this day and age, it's very, very hard for people to believe that there's some truth to something. You think of AJ Lee and Becky Lynch. We were supposed to believe that AJ Lee, CM Punk, Becky Lynch, and Seth Rollins still have this livid hatred for each other. Or dislike, let's use a better word. And then you watch WWE Unreal, and you see that it's a hell of a lot different. So it's very, very difficult these days to convince people that something might have a little bit more reality in it than you think. And this is why the CM Punk Kevin Owens stuff is working so well. But yeah, I kind of like it. And the sad thing about it is Road Dogg left. And I think right about now, Road Dogg would probably really enjoy booking this WWE SmackDown. It's amazing what cutting an hour off the show will do. They didn't have a mass exodus in creative, and they didn't have a signing orgy in creative. It's the same people. Isn't it kind of funny that these same people could give us so much shit for so long, and then in a matter of 2 weeks, make you feel otherwise? Not this past Monday's Raw, but the Monday before that right after SummerSlam was awesome. To me, it was probably the best Raw of the year. Better than the night after WrestleMania. And then we see this past Friday SmackDown, like, wow, this is the same creative team that's been giving us shit. And it shows that if they really, put their mind to it, they can give us good shit. All right. Tristan, my thoughts on the Wendy Richter screw job. It was kind of, let me put it this way. I don't always try to be, conspiracy theory, but Wendy Richter had to have known it was Moolah. And the reason why I say that is because when you watch her against the Spider Lady wasn't a fucking mute. When Wendy Richter would hit her, or when Spider Lady was hitting Wendy Richter, you would hear sounds. If you ever watch a match and somebody hits someone, you hear them say, like, they make some sound effects. Hogan would do that. Hussa, hussa. Like wrestlers would do that when they connect. So if I'm Wendy Richter and I got a wrestler, the Spider Lady, and I'm listening to her sounds, and you don't say to yourself, wait, I think this is fucking Moolah. And her side. It's just, I think there's more to it. What I truly think is, I think Wendy knew that she was facing Moolah, and they told her she was facing Moolah, but it was going to be the Spider Lady, so nobody knew it was Moolah. But I think Wendy didn't know that she was going to lose. I think Wendy probably thought that she was going over in that match. I do believe it was a screw job. I absolutely believe it's a screw job. But the idea that she didn't know it was Moolah, I don't buy that for 1 minute. I don't buy it for 1 minute. So, Dorian says, did I know Amazing Red was supposed to be in the Cruiserweight Classic, but he broke his leg doing the motion caps for WWE 2K, and he told him to keep his mouth shut about it. Let me put it this way. Amazing Red, I go back to the days of USA Pro Wrestling. He cut promos for my hotline back in the late 90s, Blackheart Sports Entertainment Hotline. He cut promos for it. We remember Red when he was with the SATs. It wasn't just Jose and Joel Maximo. It was them and Amazing Red. They were the Spanish announce team, SATs. And, the thing is, we heard back in the day that they would get some extra work with the WWE. We always wanted to see them make it. Not just them, but other teams too. We lobbied for the Christopher Street Connection and others. We wanted to see these guys make it to the big time. SATs ended up going to TNA and did a pretty decent job at the time. But as far as Red doing motion capture, I don't recall that story with him. We did hear about indie wrestlers doing motion capture because there would be some footage revealed later on that this person's doing other people's moves and this and that. You don't always necessarily have the wrestler themselves doing it. You'd have indie guys doing it instead, especially younger indie guys that could do a bunch of it. But never knew at the time that Red was doing motion capture for 2K. And if WWE told him to keep it quiet, I believe that. I absolutely believe that. It would have been great to see him in a Cruiserweight Classic. I don't know how far he would have gone. I still think back to Caval when they brought him in. That was just destined for disaster. Caval, low-key disaster. They tried to make him the ladies' man. Nothing was going to work because, we obviously knew low-key's real attitude, and WWE was not. It was not in the cards for him. And I understand why. I just don't know if WWE would have pushed Amazing Red that hard. It would have been nice, don't get me wrong. I mean, anytime somebody from my neck of the woods appears on a mainstream program, it always put a smile to my face. It always put a smile to my face. And the best one ever was my friend Timmy, the ECW zombie. You know, we were doing hotlines at the time. We felt like the Blackhearts made it. You know, he fucking opened up WWE's ECW TV show. But the thing is, you root for people that's why I always rooted for Eddie Kingston. But what I see now, you know, like, he doesn't seem healthy. He seems, you know, like, unhealthy. And because wrestling makes him happy, like, AEW's giving him a platform. And I kind of think it's ass backwards. I think you got to take care of other things first and then do this. But, you know, that's what it kind of feels like. Like, I don't want to find out a tragedy with Eddie Kingston or some serious health scare or something like that. But you see what you see. And I say to myself, man, this feels ass backwards. This feels like a man who has some big time health issues. Not enough where he can't be cleared, but just not taking care of, you know, his body. And because wrestling is his happy zone, like, AEW's putting him in his happy zone. But to me, I think the priorities are a little out of whack. So just the way I feel. Just the way I feel. So, all right, we're going to start bringing this home. We'll finish up in a few minutes. Let's start bringing this home. Let's see. Twig says if AEW or TNA went TV 14, could they get back in the 8 or 9 Nielsen ratings again? No. Only like Super Bowl, you know, like football games. It's wrestling will never be that ever again. I don't care who it is. I don't care if they get some unbelievable celebrities, politicians, terrorists. I don't care who they get to do a guest match. Look, Bad Bunny and his billions of followers, you know, even Bad Bunny never garnered any type of ratings. They're just wrestling. There's no one person that's going to pop numbers like that. Wrestling is not the streaming platform. It's not designed that way anymore. The way we ingest things as far as TV is different. That's why TiVo failed and went out of business, because people didn't want to record or pause live TV. They wanted something on demand. You know, like, hey, I feel like watching this movie. All right, with TiVo, you have to record it first. Then you could watch it whenever you want. But now with the Netflix and everything else, you know what programs are there, and you feel like binge watching something that's there. Or you search a Roku and you find something. Like, a lot of you probably don't even know this, but WWE just launched on Roku again last week. Go on Roku and just type in WWE and look at the channel that's up there now. A shitload of people still have yet to report it. And this is not just what we talked about a month ago. They're putting a lot of archive programming on Roku because of commercials. Everything is ingested differently these days. So wrestling would never, ever remotely get to that ever again. Can't, and it won't. Scorpion Deathlock. What I think of Justin Incredible as ECW champion in 2000. Funny thing is, true story. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, I don't remember exactly when, I went to a party in Ozone Park, New York. And I'm not proud of it, but one of my friends was trying to get in one of the bedrooms of this big house party so he could see if he could find any jewelry to steal. It's true. And when we were at this party, there was a lot of hatred for Ozone Park and Howard Beach and some people in East New York. Me and my friends were from Middle Village. So we were like, nobody cared about Middle Village. But there was a lot of tension, a lot of heat that night. And there was rumors that there was going to be brawls. And the funny thing is that to this day, a few people that were there swear that Just Incredible was there. And someone else said that Taz was there. Because in case a lot of you don't know, and I put it on my X about 2 years ago, Taz used to live 5 minutes from where I live now. But this is teenage Taz. This is not Taz in 20s and 30s. So I don't think Taz was at this party, but people said Just Incredible was at this party. Then when he debuted in ECW and they said from Ozone Park, New York, I was like, I wonder. You know, I never asked him, but I met him several times through ECW and he worked for Frank Goodman. So, you know, as he got older, he developed demons, but, you know, back at that time, I can't say anything bad about him. I mean, up until I'd say around 2006, that's when the time period that I really, you know, like last mingled, talked to him through Frank Goodman stuff. Didn't really have anything bad to say about him. I know as years went by, obviously he built some big time demons and, you know, we know. But I will tell you legitimately, I can't say anything bad about him. He's obviously had some issues, no question. And I understand why people don't trust him with merch or giving him bookings because, you know, there's some stories recent years. But at the time, you know, as far as him being the world champion, you know, at the time, ECW's roster was very watered down, and there was only a select few that many people thought would be champion. Just Incredible was not one of them, but I thought he did a decent enough job. He was surrounded by Jason and also Francine. So, you know, Francine being the catalyst, you know, the bitch that everybody wanted to see, and especially when you have Bueller and Tommy Dreamer, it was a good combination. Just Incredible will always be remembered in ECW, heat-wise, was the night that Tommy Dreamer's grandfather passed away. I think it was his grandfather. There was a house show in the ECW arena. I think this was 1996. I could be wrong, but I think it was 96. And Tommy Dreamer's grandfather passed away. So they decided to do a 10-bell salute for his grandfather. And a lot of wrestlers were in the ring. The arena was stone, dead quiet. And they're doing the, you know, the bells. And here comes Just Incredible, just walking from the back. And he thinks this is ridiculous. Like, you know, like that just gave him nuclear heat from the get-go. Because, like, he interrupted, like, a little salute for Tommy Dreamer's grandfather. It was good story because it really, like, everybody in the arena wanted to beat the shit out of him. Everybody wanted to beat the balls out of Just Incredible, and that's what you want for heel heat. So I don't know if it was 1998. 1998 seems a little bit late. You could be right, Soapbox. I'm not disagreeing with you. You know, 1998 could very well have been it. Actually, you know what? You are right. You know why I know you're right? Because I don't think Just Incredible was there in 96. I don't think he was there in 96. 98 sounds more right. Yeah. Yeah, you are correct. You are correct. So, all right. Yeah, we could stick around for another 15 minutes. Let's finish this at 2.5 hours. Much love to everybody who is live on the archive. You know, just keep doing, you know, spreading the word, downloading all the shows. You know, if you're not a subscriber yet over here, subscribe. You know, by the end of 2027, my goal is to be back in the top 20 amongst all shows. Right now, we're in the top 35, top 40. I'm not embarrassed of that at all. But I want to get consistently back in the top 20, preferably top 10. And I'd like to hit 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. I mean, I'm getting ready to put Wednesdays back on YouTube and then maybe do a Saturday morning thing, you know, just to add a little bit extra content, even if we're just talking about whatever shit is going down at that particular time. But, you know, be nice to see the numbers go up a little bit. So, you know, if you can, doesn't cost nothing. Helps. How do I see the Punk Kevin Owens match ending on Friday? That's a good one. You know, they keep teasing Toronto. It doesn't matter where it happens. You know, to me, honestly, I expect Sami Zayn to fuck it up. I think doing it in Canada, I think, especially to keep focusing on the Toronto, Canada aspect of it, I kind of think we may see Sami Zayn get involved with this. Sure, we could have someone else get involved too. But I just get that vibe because it's in Canada and Kevin Owens being involved with this. I kind of think this doesn't end clean. And I don't expect Cody or Randy Orton to have anything to do with this either. I have a feeling that Sami Zayn ends up getting involved. I just, it doesn't end clean. And who knows, this could carry over to Sunday night's main event. Funny thing is, I don't see Kevin Owens fighting for this title at Money in the Bank. Even though many people think it could happen, it could be a special stipulation because of what happens. Could be a 3-way, could be a 4-way, for all we know. Could be a 5-way if you want to start figuring out what the fuck to do with Gunther, even though they're kind of like teasing the Finn Balor. I'll tell you, I'm kind of interested in Finn Balor versus Gunther. It's a match that I never really thought about all that much in the past. And I think because Finn Balor was in Judgment Day for so long. But now, taking a step back, I'm like, I think I would dig Finn Balor and Gunther. I think that'd actually be pretty much off the hook. So, all right. This is just about over. The show's just about over. Does it end in a DQ? I think it ends in a no contest. Just think back to what we had on Monday. WWE does that now. You could have a match, and then somebody hits the ring, like Big Bill, will lay out Javon Evans. All right, here's a better one. NXT. Grayson Waller versus Cruz Montana. Number 1 contendership. Winner of that match goes on to NXT Heatwave to face Tony D'Angelo for the championship. That was what happened this Tuesday. Grayson Waller versus Cruz Montana. Zilla Fatu hits the ring and lays out Cruz Montana. Referee calls for the bell. Now, in any fucking wrestling universe, that means that Cruz Montana won by disqualification. Zilla Fatu interfered, laid out Cruz Montana. Whether Grayson Waller wanted it or not, Zilla Fatu interfered, laid out Cruz Montana. Cruz Montana wins by DQ. But what happens is, moments later, Zilla Fatu lays out Grayson Waller. So now, because Zilla Fatu wants to be an equal opportunity asshole, now it's no longer disqualification victory, it's no contest. Can someone explain that to me? That's what WWE does. So Sami Zayn gets involved, no matter who he lays out. If he ends up laying out both guys, don't be surprised if WWE just says the match went to a no contest. They like doing that stuff. And, I'm not going to nitpick about it, but go look at NXT this past Tuesday and tell me if I'm lying to you. That's what they did. They online, everybody says it went to a no contest because Zilla Fatu interfered. It should have been Tony D'Angelo versus Cruz Montana and NXT Heatwave. He won by DQ. But you go on Wiki right now and you look at that match. That's not the match. Why isn't it? Sami Zayn winning Money in the Bank, not out of the question. Not out of the question. I mean, we're starting to get a vibe as far as who wins what. Some people think that Braun Breaker could win Money in the Bank again. And then you could have something where Obafemi cashes in his opportunity because he won King of the Ring. And then Braun Breaker decides, you know what, I'm going to cash in something too, motherfucker. And somehow, like, people are really brainstorming ideas right now. And that's good. That is good. That is a good thing. Coming up with all these different ideas, that's when you know that some stuff is good. When you really can't, it's not that you can't think of good ideas, but when there's so many different ways to go. I mean, I'm convinced, I've said this for 6 weeks now, I'm convinced Paul Heyman is going to be an advocate for Obafemi in the future. Why wouldn't you? Obafemi's the next big thing. That's going to happen. Right now, he doesn't need Paul Heyman. So it's not going to happen. But sometime down the line, that is going to be something, and we don't know. It could be awesome. It could suck. Just because Paul Heyman's behind it doesn't automatically make it really, really good. But there's so many different ways to go. So I like some of what we're getting. I think the problem for many is what we talked about last week. When you look at the bigger cards, the WrestleManias, the Survivor Series, the cards where they spend months building it, it's always built around the same people for the last 5 years. Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, 1 year The Rock. Like, it's around the same people. Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins had a tremendous match at SummerSlam. No question. But I think people forget we had Seth and Roman in some capacity multiple years in a row. Last year was the three-way. The year before was the tag team. This year it's, you know what I'm saying? Like, you keep where it matters the most and has the most build. Those people are the ones eating up all the time. And that has not changed. That is not changed. You have some names sprinkled in a little bit. A little Drew McIntyre here. A little Kevin Owens here. A little Sami Zayn here. But at the end of the day, it's the same players. Now, the Seth Rollins problem, I think, is a legitimate thing. Quite a few of you are now saying the same thing. And look at this past week. They advertised Seth. Seth was advertised for Monday. A lot of the news sites were advertising Seth for Monday. He wasn't there. Then Seth had been working with Oba against Division on house shows, and they didn't bring Seth to SmackDown Friday, but Tozawa instead. So, my fear with Seth is what I said. Either he's going to form a faction with the fucking Street Profits, which I don't know what the hell that's going to be. I'm not feeling that. And then I think of Seth ultimately aligning himself with Roman Reigns. And I don't know if I want to see that either. So, Twix, I think you're asking me if I liked XWF, not XFW. XWF was okay. Nothing big. It was promotion. Here in New York, I think it was on Channel 5 for a short period of time. All I know is that the owner had a giant jar of nose candy on his desk. And we heard some wild stories. Hale, was Emery Hale? I think Emery Hale was somebody they really wanted to push in that company. All right. Let's do more 3 and get out of here. I want to thank everybody again for spending a little time tonight. Dar 73rd, would I like better, WCW Cruiserweight or the X Division or 205 Lives guy? I'll tell you the truth. Out of WWF's Cruiserweight division, TNA's X Division, and WWE's 205 Live, I have to go with the X Division, and I don't even think it's close. It got interesting when Samoa Joe fought for the X Division title. A lot of people don't know this or weren't around at the time. But the X Division was always, the idea was the smaller guys. The Illich Skippers, the AJ Styles, because AJ Styles was smaller at the time. And, you Christopher Daniels and, whoever was on the card. The X Division was always perceived to be smaller guys. And then there was one event where I think Samoa Joe was going to compete in the X Division, and everybody, including me, were like, the fuck is this? He's going to, squash these people. He's going to, he's so much fatter than everybody else. And then we saw others that were bigger guys in the fighting for X Division. And then I think you saw Moose even fight for the X Division title. And then that stigma of it being like a cruiserweight title went away. But while it still was a title for the smaller guys, to me, the X Division was awesome. yeah, it got a little corny sometimes when you have like an Ultimate X and you got 8 guys in a match or 6 guys in a match and everybody's hitting their finishers one after the other. It was very choreographed, but still, those guys just killed it. 205 Live, I don't know, it just felt like purgatory for smaller guys WWE don't know what the fuck to do with. Just 205 Live never sat well with me. And, you know, the Cruiserweight division was never something that WWE put a lot of focus on. You know, WCW had a tremendous Cruiserweight division. You know, even early on, you had Ray and Eddie and Dean Malenko and others in 1995. But the Cruiserweight division was kick-ass. And then WWE was kind of like doing theirs. And they had a light heavyweight title in the 80s. They had a light heavyweight title. The Tiger Mask was a champion way back when. It was just a title that never really was mentioned much. But when WWE did their own Cruiserweight division, it was okay, but it just didn't feel deep enough. And it just felt there because it needed to be there. X Division all the way. X Division all the way. I honestly think going back at that time, the X Division and the Knockouts division is what entertained me the most with TNA. After a while, some of the older guys I got into also. You know, when Joker Sting clicked to me, then I was like, holy shit, this is tremendous. It was just, you go back and you watch it, it is kind of baffling, like how that was not more over than it was, but Kurt Angle was tremendous. You know, you had some big players. Just problem was some of them consumed way too much TV time. So there wasn't a good balance. Yes, I have seen the updated picture of Bronson Reed. And I tell you, to me, it goes back to what I said before. You know, when people used to comment about Bronson Reed's weight, including me, you would get vilified for it. You know, like, oh, superficial, you know, this and that, and, you know, you rip it, oh, you should talk, you know. But, you know, there is a disability about being that big and heavy. It's not good for your knees. It's not good for your hip. It's not good for your organs inside to be, and I'm not trying to be funny, but it's not healthy for your organs inside to be surrounded by layers of fat. You know, trust me, I was 360 pounds and my doctor literally told me, he's like, you want to live to be 60? You better start dropping some weight. You know, now my blood pressure is normal and my cholesterol is good and everything is fine. But, you know, Bronson Reed being that heavy, even when we joked and they would say 360, 360, 360, 320, whatever it was, but 330, I think is the weight. But you looked at him and it's like, you know, it's not natural. You know, I remember we just talked about this on Thursday's Patreon. You know, when I used to see like Afa and Sika and Samula and others, and these Samoans have these giant fucking asses. And then you look at Yokozuna, and then you look at Rikishi, and then you look at others. And as years would go on and I'd see that kind of size, my father's voice would always echo in my ear. And I just talked about this on Thursday. When I was younger and I started getting around 300 pounds, 310 pounds, 320 pounds, my father would take notice and my father would say, you're putting on a lot of weight. And I'm like, no, I'm not. You know, no, I'm all right. I'm all right. And my father would look at me and my father would always say this line. My father would say, you didn't get fat because of the air. And it's a funny line, but it's true. You don't get fat because of the air. You know, you have that big of a fucking ass, that means you're eating good and you're not exercising the proper areas. Unless that's your goal, to have an ass the size of a fucking dump truck. You know, so when you see Bronson Reed at that size, yeah, it's great. Tsunami, 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 tsunami. But health-wise, that's not healthy. And I think when he got injured, especially when he dove off the fucking cage and broke his ankle, I'm not saying that he wouldn't have broke it if he was 50 pounds lighter, but I guarantee you when he started dropping weight and there's less pressure on the joints and there's less stress on your hip and your body, you feel better because of it. The ankles don't hurt as much. You have a much better life, and it does get addicting. It gets addicting. You start getting into a zone and you start to see like abs and muscles that you never thought you would see. You get obsessed to push it even harder. So I'm happy for Bronson Reed. I'm very, very happy for Bronson Reed. It's not healthy to be that big. It's not. So I'm happy for him. I'm very happy for him. It's going to be interesting to see how he changes his style because, 250-pound guy giving a splash is still impressive. It's not going to be a tsunami anymore. It's going to be like, what are we going to call it? It's not going to be a tsunami. It's going to be like, I don't know, like, like hurricane watch. I don't know what you call it. What's lighter than a tsunami? I don't know. Maybe it'd be like, we could call it like the car race, the car company, Konami. What was it, Konami? Konami! Not really a tsunami, but it'll kind of be like high tide. It'll be like a little bit of high tide. It won't be a tsunami. You have an earthquake, it's a little high tide. My sidewalk got wet. This is not going to be a tsunami where fucking everything is destructed. So, yeah, I think he comes back with a different finisher too. I do. The thing is not only is he getting skinnier, but he's putting on more muscle. So when this guy takes the shirt off, he might, I don't want to say look bigger, but he might look bigger in other ways. He's not going to look small. It's going to be really interesting to see when he returns. I'll never forget when Devon showed up in TNA. Does everybody remember that? When Devon showed up and he looked like twice as big as he was before. People were like, what the fuck? I mean, it kind of looked like a bad Tom and Jerry cartoon. Remember when I think they had the episode with a balloon? I don't know if like Tom swallowed the balloon and Jerry like blew up his mouth and Tom's head blew up like this. It kind of looked like with Devon to me. Like who the fuck blew him up? It looked like a bad cartoon. He was like overinflated. It's kind of like when you overinflate like a ball. Like it's supposed to be this big, not this big. So my go-to meal when I ate a lot, I still eat a lot. I don't eat a lot, but my go-to meal, it could be pizza, White Castles, shitload of fried food. White Castles for sure. Big time. Pizza, White Castles, Italian food. I still eat that stuff, but I eat very little of it. I don't have much. So, all right, let's take two more. And we shall go. Roderick says 2005 to 2009 TNA was fire. That was a good time. 2005, 2006, Kevin and I started really solo around 2006, shortly after the Benoit tragedies. And I remember at that time, there were elements of TNA that was tremendous. But then when we got around like 2014, I think it was, when Bully Ray started coming after us, to me, that changed everything. Like when TNA was like around 2012, 2014, around that time, when they brought in Tito Ortiz, I think that was 2016? No, I think it was 2014. But when they brought in Tito Ortiz, that's a time where I thought TNA was nowhere near what it used to be. And we used to rag the shit out of them. So Devon got huge, man. I mean, he looked unhealthy. But, that guy was fucking massive. Yeah, 2013. Okay, I was kind of close. 2013. August 1st warning. That's how I always remember the Bully Ray stuff, because it happened right around that August 1st warning. I remember when Tito Ortiz came out, and I still have the DMs saved somewhere. And I was like, come on. I was like, I don't expect you to publicly rip this apart, but nobody's reacted to this. I said, you know, I understood why he defended TNA. That's his employer. Nobody in their right mind. Like, I would have been the biggest moron if I actually thought that I was going to convince somebody working for TNA to work for them and then publicly say, yeah, the storylines suck right now. I think probably the only person that probably would have went along with that was Scott Steiner. But no one in their right mind expected anybody to agree with us. But the only way you could shut us up was threatening violence. Aces and 0.8s. I remember they threatened to sue us if we sold that shirt. I still have the shirt design. I thought it was a good shirt design. It had the playing card. Instead of 8s, it said 0.8s, aces and 0.8s. Dealt a full house. But that was true. It was very true. When they were doing that storyline, the ratings dropped to 0.8. So whenever everybody talked about aces and 8s, we would always say they were aces and 0.8s. Their ratings were awful. That was around the time that Bully Ray was going to marry Brooke Hogan. And then she turned on Brooke. And then he became the leader of aces and 0.8s. That was a hot mess, man. That was a hot mess. Like, people today complain about AEW stuff. My God, could you imagine if these people were around complaining like this during that day, that era in TNA? Holy shit. Holy shit. I can only imagine what would have happened. So people would have showed up at people's houses, I think. I really do. All right. You have to Google what Steiner math is. Just Google it. Google it. My favorite Steiner math of all time. You could go look it up on my X account. Just go on search my profile, Scott Steiner. When he got rushed to the hospital that time and they thought he wasn't going to make it, I put on my X, I said that he had like a 96.5% chance of, I think, this going 50-50. And I just used a bunch of Steiner math, but it worked. It just, worked well. And he survived, thank God. Thank God he's doing good. Although I get worried about Scott Steiner's future. I always get worried about his future health. I just like, that family has got great genetics, man. I hear Braun Breaker, Brock Rechstein. I think Brock is the other son that's in football now. I hear that these guys don't and never did roids. I heard Braun never did roids. Like, he's just so into like health in his body, like wouldn't even consider roids. So these guys are freaks of nature, man. And it's going to be interesting if Braun's brother could fucking, I think it's his brother, right? If Braun's brother, Brock Rechsteiner, if he has any charisma to him, that motherfucker, I think you got to look out for. That guy I could see dyeing his fucking hair, and that might end up being, I'm not saying he'd be better than Braun Breaker, but that's someone that I think people are going to see out of nowhere, be like, holy shit, where did this come from? I'm telling you. Oh yeah, Brock is Scott's kid, and Braun is Rick, obviously. So cousins. My thoughts on the MFTs winning the tag titles. The Wyatt Six won the tag titles. We see what happened to them. That means nothing. That means nothing right now. Haku getting this opportunity is bucket list. And it's nice for Haku. But if we're being totally honest, in 2026, that WWE Universe don't give two shits about Haku. They don't give two shits. To me, it's just another bloodline family member on fucking TV. Guy's amazing. I loved Meng back in the day. I loved all the shit that he did. Loved the Faces of Fear. Loved the fucking, stuff with Andre. Loved the shit on his own. Loved the WCW stuff. Meng is good. But to me, you bring him in at a point where I think the WWE Universe could care less. Could care less. It's kind of like Tala Tonga, with all due respect, does nothing for me. Tama Tonga, it's almost like he's the only reason why Tala Tonga is still there. You put Haku because you can't sell this team on its own. So you put a figurehead there. This is temporary. I truthfully believe within 6 months, unless something dramatically changes within 6 months, one or both of those guys will be out of there. This is a temporary thing. To me, this is just to get another team they're planning on winning the tag titles. This does nothing. They don't get great pops. The universe really doesn't care much about them. You know, it's nice to see Meng. He looks great, but still, really, I'm not feeling it. All right. I am good at Jet. I want to thank you again for spending a little bit of your Sunday night with yours truly. Here in New York, we are almost at 11 p.m. Very manageable. And trust me when I tell you, as soon as this show is over, I will not do it live on camera. I don't even know if it's illegal to do that, but you best damn believe I'll be popping that and hopefully sleeping like a baby again tonight. But definitely tomorrow night, I will be live right here, right after Raw. Literally 2 minutes after Raw's off the air, we are live. And we're getting into whatever happens. Roman Reigns will be back. And remember, Solo Sikoa will be presented to him on a silver platter. Obviously, there's going to be some swerve there. LA Knight's going to get involved. It's going to be the same old shit. We just got to see what happens with Solo Sikoa. Are they going to do a storyline where Solo is forced to do what these guys say? Is he going to be forced to have Roman Reigns, have him take out LA Knight? That's not very babyface-ish of Roman, if that's even a word. Like, this is just a hot mess. I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt, see what happens tomorrow night. Maybe we get lucky and it's just a 1 week thing and Solo, is presented there and Solo does something stupid, against the bloodline. But again, we're supposed to cheer Roman, right? Aren't technically the Usos baby faces? Everybody fucking still loves Jacob Fatu. So even if Solo goes against him, it's like, is he heel? Is he babyface? Like, it's just a hot mess. And this all is just to eat up weeks with LA Knight. Because don't forget, next week, Roman is not on. Remember the schedule that we talked about. It's almost every other week for the most part. So 1 week he's on and 1 week he's off. 1 week he's on and 1 week he's off. And then you're going to realize, holy shit, this is a storyline. It's going to take 2 months to get to a match. That's how I feel about it. But anyway, we'll be live tomorrow. So I hope you could join me. And we're out of here. So much love to all of you. Catch you all in the next one.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a podcaster. For me to live any other way was nuts. To me, those goody-good people who worked shitty jobs for bum paychecks and took the subway to work every day and worried about their bills were dead. I mean, they were suckers. They had no balls. If I wanted something, I just took it. I ran everything. I paid the bills. I paid the host. I even paid the masked maniac. Everybody had their hands out. Everything was for the taking. We always called each other good fellas. You would always hear from somebody. You're gonna like Don Tony. He's all right. He's a good fella. He's one of us. But if you're part of my crew, nobody ever tells you they're gonna get rid of you. It doesn't happen that way. There weren't any arguments or curses like in the movies. See, your haters come with smiles. They come as your friends, the people who've claimed they care the most for your life. And now that's all over. And that's the best part. Today everything is different. There's lots of action. I don't have to wait around for everything like everyone else. Oh, I didn't get the vaccine? Fuck you, vaccine me. Oh, your delivery guy has COVID? Fuck you, feed me. Right after I moved here, I ordered egg noodles and ketchup, and I got spaghetti with meat sauce. I'm no longer an average nobody, while they get to live the rest of their lives like a bunch of schnooks.